3, 2, 1. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Select Board meeting of May 31st, 2022. On our agenda this evening, we will start with public comment. We'll go to Select Board Liaison, Town Manager reports. We have a request from Elder Services for some ARPA funds, about $725. We'll talk about that. We'll then get an update from the Department of Public Health, followed by a presentation on open space and rec plan, get an update. We have a request to change the doing business as for Ricky's Liquors, about $825. Then we're going to talk about some instructional motions that came through town meeting. One of them related to an affordable housing trust fund, and the second related to senior center and senior activities. We then will talk about Simon's Way Advisory Committee, creation and charge, which we have in our packet. We'll talk about that tonight. We have one item on surplus property, police car number 12. Talk about future agendas and then approving meeting minutes. So if I could, we did have one thing that wasn't anticipated 48 hours in advance, but I think it's okay to discuss. It was a request to have a member of both the school committee, which we won't talk about, and the select board be a designee to offer brief remarks on the town common for, sorry, get my date correct, is it June 12th? And I don't think we're meeting again before that, correct? So, yeah, so I think otherwise we won't be able to respond to that, and it just came in at 9:10 this morning. We're not going to really deliberate. I think it's just seeing, is there someone that would be interested in volunteering to do that? So this is a designee from each committee to offer brief remarks on the town common for the celebration starting at 4:30, and to be able to get added to the speaking program.
The 12th.
I think that
It's a Sunday.
I am not able to do that. Is there someone for whom that could work, timing-wise?
Sorry.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, thank you. And then the other brief comment is that, actually I can save that for Liaison Town Manager report. Why don't we do that? So let's open to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak this evening in the audience? Seeing no one in the room that would like to speak right now. Anybody online, Caitlin?
No.
All right. In that case, I think we can move on from public comment. Let's go to Liaison and Town Manager reports. Liaison reports. Anybody want to? Carol, fire away.
Thank you. I will just, don't have any liaison reports, but I was, like most of us, was very nice to attend Memorial Day services. Thank the state delegation, marching band, police, all the volunteers. You know, Kevin, it's Kevin's last Memorial Day service. Kevin Bowmiller's retiring. Bill Brown helped. I know some of us helped put out the markers in preparation for putting out the flags at the Boy Scouts Days. Thanks to the Boy Scouts. I know I'm forgetting people, but it was a really nice event. And you know, and some of us spoke at the. Jackie did the big speech at the which was great at Laurel Hill, and then the three of us spoke at the other cemeteries throughout the morning. So it's a little hot, but it was a very nice event.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Mark. I'll just echo what Carlos said, and then I'd like to add that the fire department did an amazing job when a couple of the band people were in distress. They were able to square that situation away. I'm very surprised at how well that they could stand up there with all their band gear and everything for, you know, close to an hour, and I'm in a suit and I wanted to tap out after 5 minutes. So, kudos to all of them for that. I also attended the opening for the Lowell House on Middlesex Ave, the treatment facility. I got to walk through. I didn't mention who I was because I just am a random person just checking out. And Chris ended up giving me a tour there. There's lots of cameras, which is good, that we noted couple months back. But I think that if everybody is like him, he's, you know, kind of youngish, If everyone's like him that works there or that's gonna be going there, because he's a recovering addict, after 4 years sober now, I think it's gonna be a great success for Reading, because just the passion in which he was just speaking about everything that, just to some random guy that's just walking through there with him, it was very powerful. The same thing with Bill, who gave the speech, who's the CEO of it. I genuinely feel that, it doesn't seem like some money-making operation. It really seems like they genuinely want to just help all these kids. So I think it could be a great success for Reading, so that's all I got.
Thanks, Chris. Jackie?
I know we're gonna hear from Ade on Board of Health issues, but just a kudos to Rich Lopez. He recently completed the MAPC Foundations for Public Health course. It's a 35-hour program that's the standard for public health professionals certification. And then just a little flag for the calendar, next Monday, June 6th at 7 o'clock, the Cultural Council will hold their monthly meeting and also their year-end meeting and kind of go over their grant-making process for next year for any potential grantees who are interested. And that's all.
Thanks, Jackie.
Great,
Karen?
thank you, sure. I was feeling kind of tired the last couple of weeks, and this is why. Most of us attended the ARPA meeting, which is great, because it just makes our decision-making more efficient when we get here. Thank you, Mark, for being the vice chair. The Pear meet and greet at the library, a lot of us attended as well. That was very well, and Fidel as well. A lot of folks that we hadn't seen in a long time attended. It was very well received. I haven't heard back, but I suspect she has plenty of volunteers, and they're off to a great start. And there was a bulletin board full of, were they priorities? They were things that are important to the community.
I think that was it, yeah.
It was, yes, so the board was full of all of these things that are important, and there was a lot of overlap, and it was great. I know, Chris, you weren't there, but your wife was there as well. I sat at the table with her. Okay, and then the Memorial Day presentation, great job by Kevin Miller as usual, and this will be his last event. And we were lucky enough, our delegation, Senators Lewis, Rep. Jones, and Rep. Haggerty all attended, so it was a good time to catch up with them as well. We appreciated them participating, and I know the veterans appreciated it as well. And we also, I think we had full house at the Joint Economic Development meeting with RMLD. And for all you watching tonight, the great thing that came out of that is that we are going to be able to come up with a process to be able to use their boardroom for official board and committee business. There's also a small conference room that is very private, which is in the same area, which we may be able to get access to as well. So if we have shine counselors that need private space, that's an option. So we really just, Fidel will just have to figure out what's the process for boards and committees to be able to book it. And we're really excited about that. And the Board of Commissioners and the General Manager, the existing and interim, they're very happy to do that, and we're all excited to work together. And let's see, and then the other thing that happened this week was the RMLD Audit Committee as well as their regular meeting. So the audit results, Chris, I believe you were there partly as well. So the audit results, they were clean. I do believe I heard best in years, so all very good. Almost 17 million in unrestricted cash, 1 million in net increased power sales. So that's the right direction. For a while there, they had been heading down, and now with electrification, they're heading back up. So that's very good. It was discussion about the retiring the RECs. So to be able to be in compliance with our clean energy goals, they will be, instead of selling off these RECs to generate cash, they will be retiring them and keeping the credit for the clean energy in with RMLD. And that is very complicated, so that is as deep as I can get on that. But RMLD will achieve the policy of retiring all of their credits, 100% of them by 2050, which is in line with the climate law. Okay, they're gonna talk about potentially changing how their net is calculated. They calculated 8% on the net, and I think other utilities in the state do the gross. was just something of note. I don't think it will make a huge difference. There was also the conversation of, there were a couple of questions from the audit committee about debt. RMLD does not have debt. Per our auditor, the majority of MLPs that they work with do have some level of debt. They could think of only one other that did not. So RMLD is fairly unique in that respect. So, you know, that's something they can consider for planning the major capital improvements they have to do. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. So a couple of updates. Recalc, we should talk about. So tomorrow night, June the 1st, 7 p.m. at the library is a listening session. And would encourage folks to either come to the library to attend, and it's available on Facebook Live, RCTV, it'll be broadcast on. And it's to listen to the community. So if you have some things to say, please do come to the library if you can, or participate on Zoom. If you want to hear what's going on, you can join by the other methods that are taking place. Recalc also will have a survey going out in September. I know it's far away, but it will be coming out in early September, right after the Labor Day holiday, with the goal of understanding from the community what the needs are for the senior community, and also related to a potential community center. So we encourage folks, we will advertise it, publicize it quite a bit so everybody will know about it. We encourage folks to respond to that survey and let us know what your thoughts are. It's a pretty in-depth survey, but it's asking some really good questions about where the priorities are. So we hope that you will work on that. As it relates to boards and committees, thanks Karen for the reminder, we will be having interviews. I think VASC is meeting June 2nd, is that right? That's all right. Yeah. Okay. This is meeting June 2nd. So hurry up if there's anything you want to say there. And then FinCom also has some, at least one vacancy, and then folks that would like to be reappointed. But so that means that there are open slots on that as well. There isn't a date scheduled yet for the meeting, but please if you have interest in learning more about the role on FinCom, you can come and ask folks who are on FinCom now. But please fill out an application if you're interested as soon as possible. I also went over the treatment facility. Thanks. I think it was great. I got there on the early side. A lot of EMS folks came in, which I think was great. They had a chance to see the building. It's very nicely done on the inside. They did a really nice job changing it over. It feels like people could actually reside there while they're in treatment. So I think that was really good. And I chatted with Bill, the CEO, a little bit as well, which was great. So that was awesome. Let's see, I think that's it on my side. Fidel, please.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, Memorial Day was absolutely incredible. It was a gorgeous day, and just very emotional for everyone who was there. I'm happy to report that we made an offer today to our new veteran services officer, and that gentleman has accepted, pending the hiring process. So we found who we think is going to take the baton from Kevin. So the ARPA survey is currently out. We currently have 557 responses. 97% of those respondents identify as residents, and it's really interesting to see, what the priorities are. That survey is going to be open until the 14th of June, and just to remind everyone that we do have paper copies at the town clerk's office, at the senior center, and the public library. So our goal is to get to 1,000. So we've had it open for about 2 weeks now, with 2 more weeks remaining. So I'm really hoping that these last 2 weeks really make a push to get us to that goal. I wanted to also say that tomorrow we are officially entering the eligibility period for the Killam School. So it is the long first step of the Massachusetts School Building Authority to get us through to hopefully a new school. There are a lot of things that that have to happen from now until February 23rd of 2023, when this period is over. Just the one thing that is gonna be a heavy lift is gonna be the article for fall town meeting to request the funding for that, the preliminary design and feasibility study. So you know, we're hoping to really talk it up over the next 4 or 5 months to so that all members of town meeting are aware of the request that is coming. Finally, we received a video of a new group that is part of the schools. They're called Students of Colors and Allies for Equity, Justice, and Inclusion. So they made a presentation to the school committee, and they wanted to share that presentation with the select board. I will email it to the select board, and will include a link of the video in our next town manager newsletter.
Awesome, thanks. And just to mention also, if you're looking for a link to the ARPA survey, it was in the town manager newsletter. I believe it's on the website also.
It is on Facebook, absolutely.
Great, so please, we encourage folks to respond to that.
Mark, real quick, sorry, it wasn't a liaison per se, but I should mention RMLD last week had a groundbreaking for the EV charging stations. And they kind of had the official kickoff in front of Christopher's in the cobblestone parking lot there. And then we're gonna have one at the library and one on Lincoln Street. So I don't have a date when it'll be completed, but the construction has started. I don't know if Fidel has a completion date for any of them, but it should be coming soon.
Exactly, yeah, and they broke ground at the one on the library on Friday as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think you heard about that one, yeah.
Yep. And the library, our library director has bragging rights. She's probably gonna be the only library around with a level 3 charger, so, you know, for a while she gets to brag about that. So that was really great, another grant that RMLD was successful in winning for us.
Awesome. I neglected to say, sorry, that our videographer tonight is Rob, and we are being broadcast this evening on Verizon Channel 33 and Comcast Channel 22. Sorry, I should have done that at the beginning, but I forgot. So, any other last comments, Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I don't know, Fidel, if you can find out, did the ARPA survey go out through the schools and whatnot? Didn't we see
Yes.
about? So it did go out.
Yes, it did, through Recreation as well, in the town manager newsletter, but yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, let's roll. Next, vote to spend ARPA funds on elder services request. Jean, Amy, Jenna. And I think, do you see, is the spot marked?
Stand here.
You don't mean to be too directive, but that's the perfect spot to stand.
That's perfectly fine.
Oh, yeah. All right, thank you, Caitlin. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. My name is Jean Delios, for those of you who don't know me. I am the Assistant Town Manager, and I've been with the town for almost 13 years, so thank you for having me tonight. I also wanted to welcome with me Kevin Bowmiller, who everyone has said such nice things about, and they're all true. He's joining us over Zoom, even though I can't really see him. I believe he is there, so thank you, Kevin. And he is the outgoing Community Services Director and also the Veteran Services Officer. He's been doing double duty for a bunch of years now. I'm very happy for him that he's now gonna go to the next chapter and enjoy retirement life, but we will miss him. The silver lining to that cloud is that we have promoted our very capable internal candidate, Jenna Fiorente, who's here with us tonight. Jenna has served us well as the rec administrator, rec coordinator before that, intern before that, so she's really worked her way up. And that's always a nice story when you have staff that grow with the organization, so we're thrilled to have her. And also Amy O'Brien, who is our very busy, always doing at least 2 jobs, Elder Human Services Administrator. She's the day-to-day person, making it all come together, making it all work. So thank you both for coming tonight. I wanted to say a few things about kind of what this ask was about and why it is before you tonight. We have been working very closely, staff, the Council on Aging, and the Recalc Committee, to really come up with ideas for how we can do better for our seniors. And so the presentation I'm gonna go through tonight is really focused on that. And special thanks to Mark for pointing us in this direction and leading the charge to come up with some ideas for doing better. We know we can do more, and we know that this particular group, this population, has really had a very difficult couple of years with COVID, and we want to be able to offer more. So that's why we're before you tonight. But I also wanted to recognize that the Council on Aging and Recalc have been tremendous partners to get us to this point with so many things, but of course with the ARPA request. And so this is a critical need for seniors. Seniors have been hit hard, at least as hard as young people. And I want to show what can be done through a pilot program using these funds to try some things, to see if maybe we can float some programs and try some things in a different way and offer seniors the kinds of things that they've been asking for now and not wait until a new building is built. So we like to think of this as a bridge to the future, and that's what I'm going to run through. Next slide, please. So this is really just giving you a picture of the population, a growing population of senior citizens age 60 and over. And you can see from the slide, and this is one that I borrowed from UMass when they presented at the forum back in April. This is a much larger population than what we planned the current senior center for 30 plus years ago. We are roughly 25% of the population is age 60 and over, and that is growing. So we have a large population with a lot of needs. Next slide, please. This just presents a timeline showing you kind of where we've been. So 30 plus years ago, the Reading Senior Center opened, and that was a converted fire station. Some people's family members worked out of that fire station, and there's a lot of pride associated with that building. And kudos to everyone who made that happen back in 1991. I remember back then I was doing something similar for the town of Saugus where I worked, and back then there was all kinds of money available, and we got money to build a brand new senior center when I was in Saugus. So I've been through this process a couple of times in my career, and it is a huge undertaking. So not to discredit, that was a great project. And then in 2015, we did some rebranding to try and attract more seniors. We called it the Pleasant Street Center, not the Senior Center, because, you know, who wants to go to that? So hoping that we can attract more people, we really wanted to look at this as something inviting. But we knew that the building was getting tired, and we knew that there were limitations. It's a small building. It's an old building. So we did a needs assessment in 2017. We hired the UMass Boston Gerontology Institute to really take a look at it and come up with some recommendations. You know, what do we do now? And what they concluded was you have the smallest senior center among your peers. We were compared to about 6 other communities. You have the least amount of staffing among your peers. And you have a center that has served you well, but has really outlived its useful life. So we began to do some modest upgrades and fixed the things that we could fix for not a lot of money. We updated the reception desk, and facilities was great. They helped us spruce up with paint and the kinds of things that you do when you're budget driven, which we always have been. And then COVID hit, and the center closed. And we certainly didn't know what the future held. Would people come back after COVID? And what we found was that, yeah, they wanted to come back and then some. And so we began to think about a new center, and the select board appointed the committee, the ad hoc committee recalc, and we started thinking about what are we gonna do with the future and long-term. We had a little bit of money in the budget, so we could hire UMass again to come in and do a community engagement effort. When we started thinking about planning for a new center, we said, well, what are we planning for? Is it a senior center? Is it a community center? What do we need to focus on? What will the town support? So this community engagement effort, and thank you, Mark, for making the plug about the event tomorrow night, it's really meant to get the pulse of the community so that we are on the right track to plan accordingly for what this community needs and what this community will support. Next slide, please. And so this is what we've heard that seniors need. So many times, so many thousands of phone calls during the pandemic that staff made to reach out to seniors. How you doing? How's it going? They're lonely. They didn't even want to go to Market Basket. So many things that we heard, you know, they wanted to get out. They wanted to go on trips. They wanted to be together and try and have some fun. This is what this pilot program is really pointing to. We need to do more. Next slide, please. So this just is a brief overview of what recalc is. I use these acronyms. My husband always says, please stop using acronyms. Please just talk in regular words. So it's the Reading Center for Active Living. And we're calling it the Reading Center for Active Living, which is our vision for the future, because we really think it's meant to be inclusive and all ages and really promoting active living among a broad spectrum of the community. And so this ad hoc committee, we've been busy, meeting a lot. Thursday night or Wednesday night, I begged them to please call the night quits at 10 o'clock after 3 hours of going over excruciating detail on surveys. But yeah, it's a hard-working group, and it's fun to be partly involved in that. But this group is really looking at planning, which we want to make sure we're really looking at this holistically. Next slide, please. So the planning process really focuses on this vision. What do we need? What are we going to be in the future? One of the things we spent a lot of time with recalc is benchmarking and looking at 21 area communities. And kudos to John Sasso, who's organizing it all in this beautiful spreadsheet so we can see it all lined up and see how we compare to our peer communities. UMass is a big part of this effort because they have the expertise. They are the experts in gerontology, and they have a deep bench of people with a lot of experience, have done this many, many times. So please join us tomorrow night if you can, over Zoom, in person. We'd love to have you. And lastly, what we're gonna end up with is data. And I said this the other night. You know, we want to make informed decisions. We want to approach a feasibility study with a baseline of data of where we're going and what we want, and not just hire an architect and say, draw us a building. Make it be based on what the community can support, what the community wants, and what we're collecting and seeing. This survey that Mark mentioned earlier, it's going to be an extensive survey. And it will really provide us with the data that we need to make the right decisions for Reading, not for anybody else. Next slide, please. So this just, again, recaps kind of what we've heard. Again, working with all of the folks involved in this. We want more in-person programs, and we think off-site is one way to do it. To supplement the existing great work that is being done at the Pleasant Street Center. And again, kudos to the staff, Amy and her team, Elise and Carrie and Joe, who drives the van, and Elaine, who's answering the phone and guiding people and greeting people. It's a wonderful team of people and so many others that are involved, but it's limited and they have to close programs. They can only accommodate so many. So this idea points to using maybe some existing resources like the library and having programs offsite rather than focusing programming. We can't add any more to the existing center, but expanding in that way. Also virtual programs. We have a company in Newton that we're working with that can do virtual programs. They have a ton of them. Lots and lots of people, seniors included, are very expert at Zoom now. So that's another way to engage. We have some accessibility improvements, just a few small things that we need so that people can hear us when we're doing programming. And that would be a big step in the right direction. Transportation is huge. That's what we keep hearing. More trips, more fun things to do. Let's get out, let's experience different things. And then, of course, the biggie is the feasibility study, which is what the big part of this ask is, and we'll go into the details in a minute. But being able to fund that after we get through the survey next fall, it will really get us going to getting the long-term plan organized. And then the last two are volunteer coordinator. We have so many volunteers, people that want to help, people that want to get involved. Having somebody coordinate that would be fantastic. And again, that would be through, contracted, not actually hiring someone. And then the mental health, really more wellness. Our team of people doing mental health are amazing. We have a wonderful working group, police department, now that we have our new clinician. They're doing incredible work, working with elder human services staff. So this is something a little bit different. Next slide. So the short-term funding is what this is about, something that seniors can have to do now, not 3 to 5 years from now when we're hopefully under construction and ready to open. So we want to maximize and add what's here under short-term, offsite programming, working with the library, more bus trips, virtual programs, maybe some new activities under the tent that we added, and then something I'm calling Wellness Wednesdays, where we just focus on wellness programming, maybe at the library. And then long-term, again, is the feasibility study for a new center. That's the next milestone that we need to hit for planning. Next slide, please. So this is a recap of the ask, which is $900,000. $300,000 is what we think we need for the feasibility study. I think I mentioned the other night that Andover spent $250,000, so I think that's a pretty good number. $250,000 is budgeted for supplemental programmings and additional space, and that's really about like renting church basements and that kind of thing. Senior bus trips, we've budgeted for $150,000, and again, this is over a 24-month period. Wellness programs at $75,000. Those virtual programs that I mentioned, that comes in at $25,000. A contracted volunteer coordinator would be about $50,000, and then the accessibility improvements, another $50,000. Next slide, please. So now I'm just going to walk you through a little more detail on how we got to these numbers. So the $300,000 for the feasibility study, the baseline services are about $150,000. And again, this is an old building with a lot of moving parts. It's a 140-year-old building. It's historical. It's in a residential neighborhood. There's a lot of things to think about when we think about reusing the existing site and the existing building. But we're also looking at other ideas too. So the baseline will be to identify the existing conditions, space needs programming, kind of add up what we need, look at the alternative sites, and then develop cost estimates. That's probably the biggest, is getting those cost estimates and getting them accurate. The public meetings will also be part of this as well. So that's pretty much the baseline. And then in addition, the geotech, to make sure the soils are okay, we don't have any issues, that'd be $30,000. And that's, again, if we were gonna do an addition to the existing building, we wanna make sure we know what we're dealing with. Same with the structural, we wanna make sure, we have a structural engineer verifying that this building can be worked with. And then hazardous materials is the $50,000, and I mentioned the other night that the town of Pembroke recently ran into a problem where they went through this whole process and they underestimated or missed, I'm not exactly sure, some of the hazardous materials associated with their building. And so to do the remediation, they had to go back to town meeting, and it was a difficult night at town meeting, and town meeting said no. So we don't wanna we wanna do our homework up front and really make sure we're careful about identifying costs, because if you miss something, it comes back to bite you, and we don't want that. The traffic and parking study, in all my years of doing community development work, traffic and parking is always top of the list. And we always need to make sure we understand access in and out of the site, especially if we're adding. Make sure we have more than enough parking, because that always comes up. And then if we are to stay in the existing location, this is in a residential neighborhood, so we wanna make sure we get that right. And then last but certainly not least is the historical analysis. The building is on the National Register of Historic Places. It has an important place in the fabric of the community. So many people have told me that they've had family who've worked there as firefighters, and it is a bit of an icon for the town. So we wanna make sure, if we are gonna keep it and reuse it, we wanna do it correctly and appropriately under the historical umbrella. Next slide, please. Okay, so now comes the fun part of the programming. And this is really how we would do something in a different way to provide more things to do for seniors now. So this is the idea of renting church basements, church halls. We've talked to a few of the churches. There's lots of opportunities out there. Schools, maybe. The $70,000 we came up with, Jenna spends $35,000 a year in renting space in schools. So we thought, all right, for 24 months, 70,000 probably is about right. Clearly for schools, probably more weekend time or that type of thing. And this is probably a little bit on the high side for rents, because as we continue to poke around, people are embracing this and saying, just, you can use this room, you can have this, like Karen was saying earlier with RMLD, just use the room, work with us, obviously, be respectful, but I'm really getting a lot of positives that the community is embracing this already, and we haven't even really started. The second one, instructors, supplies, and these are the contracts with vendors, our wellness people, our Reiki people, our chair yoga people, our Zumba people. That all adds up to about 30,000. And then the staff support, the promotion, the administration. Somebody said, well, who's gonna run all these things? Well, yeah, we definitely need people to run it. We can't just think it's gonna run itself. So we really need more money to either bring in people through contracts, or one idea is to use existing staff that we have that are part-time, that are happy to take on more hours, and bring them up to full-time with this line item. We're in the process of hopefully hiring a senior center coordinator. Amy's been doing that job now for I don't know how long, in addition to her own. But when we find that part-time hire, then we would bring them in and say, hey, can you work on full-time and jump in on this? And Jenna has a part-time program coordinator for rec. It'd be the same thing, like, hey, can you work us some more hours, help us out, run some programs? So they're very much aligned with both of those positions to do programming and administration, posting things on websites and promoting and that kind of thing. So we think that's a good use of that money. And then last but not least, the line item near and dear to my heart is the budget for food. As everyone knows, anytime I host a meeting, there's a lot of food. So if anyone's coming tomorrow night, you'll eat well. And so we want to make sure we have food, because as we heard the other night, people like to eat and they want to have food when they're going to have a good time. So
And when
that's
we hear
that.
about men like to eat meat.
Exactly, exactly.
Heard that.
Yes, yes, so we're gonna focus on that. We hear it. Yeah, so that's pretty much what the programming and space line item is. If you could go to the next one, thank you. So this is just a little snapshot of what we mean by the senior bus trips. So for example, the holiday pops, we try and get that in 2022, and that's just an example. I'm not saying we're definitely doing this, but for example, we could rent a couple of buses bring like 100 people into the holiday pops. We could help with the cost of the ticket, cause it's like, who knows how much money now and who knows how much money then. Who knows how much the buses are gonna cost, but we can maybe offer it to seniors for a modest price, not some crazy number, to bring them in and have them enjoy the Boston Pops holiday performance at Symphony Hall. So that's just like one example, and then going through, we would do more of that kind of thing in 2023 and then in 2024, and just get people to have more fun and go on these bus trips. They love it, and it's just nice to get out and be outside. Next slide, please. This is another one that I really like, which is the wellness program. So we keep hearing that this has been so devastating to be so isolated and not able to, just have a regular life. So we love the idea of maybe partnering with the library, and it's still in discussion, but the library is extremely supportive. But working through the details, we could have a session on meditation and maybe another session on some other form of wellness, or maybe something fun like pet therapy, and then bring in a box lunch. And there's another whole day that we can serve our seniors in the most beautiful building, the library, with everything right there, parking and, everything they need, without a big hit to the town for cost. So that's just one example, and we bring people in to run different programs. The bonus of this is that it plugs into our existing team, the clinician at the police department and the Elder Human Services team, and now we begin to bring people in and connect even more with the existing team. So we think that that's a win-win for everybody. Next slide, please. And then this is the virtual programming. Again, contracting out. It's a very impressive website that they have of so many things, so many programs that I think would be of interest. Next slide. Thanks, Caitlin. And so this one is the contracted volunteer coordinator. We've budgeted $50,000. I love the idea of building on the huge amount of volunteers in this town, the huge amount of people that say, I'll jump in, I'll help with this, or I'll run I love to say cooking class at RCTV. Something as simple as that. We already have RCTV. They already have a kitchen. We can do this. And but we need somebody to, once again, who's gonna run it. So somebody to coordinate all the details and get some really fun things going, and coordinate the volunteers so that everybody is excited to jump in and help out. And then this really is a down payment, because the volunteers can continue to support the community regardless of what the future holds. I think that's one more and then we're done. The last one is the accessibility improvements. We've had requests for interpreters at events to translate and use sign language. And we have half a dozen or so patrons that would benefit from this, that we know of. And there's probably far more that don't even say anything. I have a mother who has a hearing problem. She never says anything. She just, I know she can't hear. So for those people who don't say anything, we can do a lot better having this. And then in addition, there's a number of different ideas for how to enhance the Great Room in particular when we're doing events. And so there's a loop system that can be added that's budgeted here so that it can interact with hearing aids. And you see it in some of the churches, the hearing impaired can really benefit from that and hear everything. Again, not just not saying anything. And I think that is it for me. Thank you very much, appreciate it, and happy to answer any questions.
Is Mary Ann Downing on the Zoom right now? If so, would you mind giving
Hi.
Martha?
I'm here.
Hi, Mary Ann. Would you like to deliver the report?
Yeah, so in a vote on our meeting on May 24th, 2022, the Reading Opera Advisory Committee voted 6 yes, 0 no, and 1 abstain to recommend this $900,000 spend of the ARPA money to be allocated to senior services as described in the presentation given to us, which is substantially the same as what was given to you.
Thanks, Marianne. Board members, comments, questions for Jean or team?
No, I've seen it several times, so I'm in full support.
Questions, comments?
I think like we've talked about, and as Jean has noted, this is one of the populations that has been most severely impacted over the last couple of years, both in terms of physical health as well as kind of mental and social and emotional health. So I think it's a good use of the funds.
Awesome. As the board's representative liaison to the Council on Aging, I can tell you that there's been a lot of discussion about what we can do for the senior community, obviously, in not really kind of knowing where to head. And I want to thank Jean and team for putting this together and thinking through how we can address some of the problems that we've been facing. I think the bridge analogy is spot on, and I think this is a real opportunity for us. Chris?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, for me, this was a yes the other night. It's a yes for tonight. I think it's long overdue. And I did mention also the food truck idea about the town would purchase a food truck and then contract it out, and then this way here it could deliver meals to seniors or a Meals on Wheels kind of scenario as well. Especially with all the other events going on in Reading. So Fidel is reaching out to other town managers, Wakefield, North Reading, to see if they'd be on board to partner and share the cost of that, because then it would be, a lot easier to just drive home with that. So yeah, like I said, I'm all for this, and let's get it done.
Any other comments? No? Ready for a motion then, please?
Yes. Move to approve $900,000 in ARPA funds for the elder services request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Plenty of seconds. Actually, one quick question I thought of, if I could. Staff support that's there. And one of the things that I think is really important is that the small team we have has been working so hard on so many things that support is just needed. And I guess the question would be, that I assume is flexible enough to kind of figure out where the help is needed and make it happen. With people thinking about it that way. Yeah. Awesome.
That's
Okay.
right.
Great. Okay, any other discussion? No. Okay, ready for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? 5-0. Congratulations, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. Good job.
All right, let's move on. Department of Public Health update. Hey, you there? Good evening.
Yes.
See Rick Lopez too. The newly trained Rick Lopez is here.
Good evening, members of the board and the general public. My name is Liaison, Health Director for the town of Reading. I'm here to give a brief overview of the role of public health within our town, how we got to this point, and some of the recommendations received so far.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Board of Health has a quorum, yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Next slide, please.
So someone has to actually call you to order.
Rick.
Oh. Rick, can you call the Board of Health to order, please?
Is there a second board member here? I don't.
Yes.
So Paul is in the audience, Kevin's in the audience.
Okay. Call to order the Board of Health.
Thank you. Sorry, Ade.
Go ahead, Ade.
So yeah, let's start over. Can you go back to slide 1, please? All right. So, good evening, members of the board and the general public. My name is Liaison, Health Director for the town of Reading. I'm here to give a brief overview of the role of public health within our town, how we got to this point, and some of the recommendations received so far. Next slide, please. Before I proceed, I would like to give a quick update on our COVID-19 response. The current total case count is 5,158, and this number is from the beginning of the pandemic. The current active cases from May 19th to May 26th is 75, 53 deaths, and 4,920 recovered cases. We are in a much better situation regarding COVID-19 response compared to a year ago. We now have multiple tools in our toolbox to deal with COVID-19. Boosters, treatments, and testing are now widely available. If you're exhibiting symptoms, please get tested. Residents of Reading may pick up test kits from the health department and other town departments like the clerk's office, the library, the senior center. Residents may also choose to get tested at the Shriners Auditorium in Wilmington. Appointments are preferred and there is no out-of-pocket cost for the test. It is available for both insured and uninsured. If you test positive, you have the option to get treated depending on your age. Please consult with your primary care physician immediately, as treatments can only be prescribed in the first 5 days after you test positive. I would like to use this opportunity once again to remind our residents that the use of monoclonal antibodies or antiviral medications is not a substitute for vaccination against COVID-19. Everyone is encouraged to get vaccinated as soon as they can, whether it's the first, the second, or the booster dose. Our next COVID-19 clinic is scheduled for June 3rd at the Coolidge Middle School from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. A quick reminder that face coverings are still recommended in indoor public settings by the Board of Health. At this point, there are no talks, no discussions or consideration about re-implementing the mask mandate. Next slide, please. Organizations, boards, and departments that carry out public health services have a huge burden of responsibility. Those key responsibilities can be grouped into the following categories: code enforcement, food protection and safety, public and environmental health protection and pollution control, disease prevention and control, emergency preparedness. Each category is unique, and I would like to briefly expand on what services are provided under each one. Next slide, please. Under the code enforcement category, the primary goal is to enforce the state sanitary code. The state sanitary code is a series of public health regulations that specify minimum sanitation standards. We perform housing inspections, usually initiated when we get a housing complaint from a resident. Once received, we schedule an inspection with the caller to inspect the potential violation. If the violation is verified, we will send out an order to correct letter to the property owner to have the violations corrected in a timely manner. 99% of violations are corrected this way. We inspect every recreational camp within the town of Reading to ensure that the camp owners provide minimum standards for housing, health, safety, and sanitary conditions for minors attending the camps. All public and semi-public swimming pools within the town of Reading are inspected to ensure that the water quality is safe and the water is disinfected constantly. We also ensure that pool supervision is provided and the emergency communication systems are functional. We require air sampling for carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide at indoor ice skating rinks and ensure that ice skating rink operators apply for annual permitting. All residential premises constructed before 1978 in which a child under the age of 6 resides must be inspected for compliance with the lead poisoning prevention law. Lead poisoning prevention is not a chapter in the state sanitary code. However, we do have to inspect for lead if we receive a report of lead poisoned child or upon the request of an occupant of a residential facility. Next slide, please. Under the food protection and safety category, our main goal is to prevent foodborne illnesses and food poisoning. The health department conducts restaurant inspections twice a year per restaurant, retail food inspections at least once a year for retail food establishments, temporary food inspections as needed for events and festivals. We inspect all food trucks and we ensure that bacteriological reports for each functioning soft serve machine are provided. We inspect all ice cream trucks and ensure that each ice cream vendor meets CORI and SORI requirements, as well as fingerprinting requirements. Every new food establishment prior to opening must go through a rigorous food plan review process to ensure compliance with the food code. Next slide, please. Under the public and environmental health protection and pollution control, our main goal is to reduce pollution and ensure that the protection of both the public and environmental health. We conduct nuisance investigations, ensuring that public nuisances such as offensive odors, noise pollution, standing water, dust, trash, overgrown vegetation are all eliminated in a timely manner. Our animal control officer performs kennel inspections, issues warnings and citations to animal owners found to be in violation of applicable laws. Our animal control officer quarantines all dogs and cats that have been bitten or that have bitten people or other animals. He also reports all quarantines to the Massachusetts Department of Animal Health. Our tobacco control officer performs tobacco compliance checks to ensure that minors are not buying tobacco products. She also performs tobacco retail store inspections. We inspect subsurface sewage disposal systems to ensure that they're functioning properly and also to ensure that groundwater is not being contaminated. We provide mosquito control services to the town of Reading, and we make sure that hazardous materials such as asbestos are carefully removed by licensed contractors prior to any demolition work. Next slide, please. Under the disease prevention and control category, our main goal is to control and prevent diseases. We provide information on important health issues to our residents, and we seek to stop the spread of dangerous diseases through mechanisms like contact tracing, isolation, quarantine, mask wearing, and immunization. Next slide, please. Under the emergency preparedness category, the main goal is to make sure we're prepared for all public health emergencies. Our protocol is to always utilize the incident command system structure to meet our public health emergency demands. We collaborate with other town departments and healthcare partners to ensure that we have the knowledge, plans, and tools to prepare for, respond to, and recover from threats to public health. We also provide information and resources to help our residents feel safe and prepared for all types of emergencies. Next slide, please. I'm sure you're all wondering how. How are we able to do all these things? Who are the people in charge of executing these public health services? The answer is simple. The Board of Health has the authority to protect both the public and environmental health. The general structure, powers, and duties of the Board of Health are created pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 111, Sections 26 through 33. The Reading Board of Health has a unique and special authority to protect both the public and environmental health. Boards of health are regular people. They're made up of people from all walks of life who care about the well-being of their community. They are either elected or appointed, and they're given the legal authority to set policies and make regulations to protect the public and environmental health. In Reading, our Board of Health members are appointed by the Select Board. Boards of Health shall consist of 3 or more members, and 1 member shall be a physician. The Reading Board of Health consists of 3 voting members and 2 associate members, 2 non-voting members. The chair of the Board of Health, Dr. Lopez, is a physician. Next slide, please. A town may provide for the establishment of the health department pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 111, Section 26A. The town of Reading created a health department in the year 2021. I know it says 2020 on the slide, but that was a typo, so it's supposed to be 2021. Anyway, in Reading, we have a Board of Health and a health department, with the health department carrying out public health services on behalf of the Board of Health. Right, the health department structure consists of a health director who is responsible for all and the overall operations of the health department. Consists of a public health nurse who is responsible for the overall health and safety of our community through education, advocacy, and delivery of care. And also a health inspector who is primarily responsible for code enforcement activities. The organizational chart to the left is the current health department structure, and starting July 1st, we will be adding a full-time admin staff and a part-time weights and measures contractor. Next slide, please. Right, here's our contact information. You can be reached at 781-942-9061, or you can visit our website. Like I said earlier, we have 5 Board of Health members, 3 voting members and 2 non-voting members. Dr. Lopez, Richard Lopez, is the chair. Carrie Donald is the vice chair. Paula Curran is a member, voting member. Kevin Sexton is an associate member, and Jerry Kramer is an associate member. And Adi, the public health director. We have Kristen Harris, the public health nurse, and we have Jennifer Velasquez, the health inspector. Next slide, please. Prior to the creation of the health department, prior to hiring a full-time health director, board members were directly involved in response planning. In the absence of a full-time health director and a raging COVID-19 pandemic, it became more apparent that the board members needed to be more directly involved with the town's COVID-19 response. There were talks about expanding the Board of Health to a 5-member board from 3 to make it easier for the board members to communicate effectively and outside Board of Health meetings. So, pretty much they commissioned the help of the MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, to conduct a review of the health services offered by the town, and in particular, those services the Reading Health Department is responsible for. The review occurred over a series of phases, and recommendations were made based on 4 focus areas: development, partnerships, communications/engagement, leadership/staffing. In each focus area, MAPC made a series of recommendations that will enable the health department to address priorities and challenges identified through the review. For the purpose of saving time, I would elaborate on the recommendations under the leadership/staffing focus area only, as this pertains directly to the reason why we're here tonight. Next slide, please. The recommendations listed by the MAPC under the leadership staffing focus area include creating a health department. Check. That was done in 2021. Hire a full-time health director. Check. That was done in 2021. We now have a full-time health director who has demonstrated leadership on health-related matters and contributed to the town's capacity to effectively coordinate and address the health needs of our residents. Next recommendation was to provide the director and department with a health clerk. Check. The position was approved at town meeting last month. Next recommendation, hire an experienced health inspector. Check. We're pleased to have Jennifer Velasquez as our health inspector. She's been with our department since February 2022. Next recommendation was to procure and utilize permitting and inspection software. Check. The permitting software was up and running prior to my arrival. We've been able to improve upon its design, build a new website, and procure an inspection software. Now, the last but not the least recommendation, which would require the select board's authorization and involvement, is to amend the town charter to change the Board of Health from a 3-member board to a 5-member board. Next. So, in conclusion, I would like to leave the board with this question. Given that we now have a fully staffed health department and a full-time health director, the direct involvement of the Board of Health members has drastically reduced. My question is, do we really need a 5-membered Board of Health? Thank you very much.
Thanks, okay. Board members, questions, comments?
No, good update, we're all up to speed, so it's good. So we're staffed.
Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I think to a day's question, I think since the Board of Health already has 5 but 2 non-voting, I don't see what the harm in just making all 5 voting. I mean, I understand back in the day, for whatever reason, they decided to do 3, but to not have 2 people to have a conversation, I could never talk to Mark. I could never just talk to Carlo, and they can't do the same thing. So I don't know why that makes sense to continue that kind of thing, because I can't imagine how you would get anything done other than just working together, just at least 2 people. That's my comment on that. And then the COVID-19 numbers that you had, there's 53 deaths in Reading since the beginning of the pandemic. Do you know how many has transpired in like the last 90 days? Is it like 1 or 2, or it's not changed? Do you know what that?
Just 1 during the Omicron surge around January.
So just 1 this entire year, which is?
Correct. So it stayed at 52 for a very long time. And then when we had the Omicron surge, we had an additional bit, making it 53.
Yeah. And then the total case count is 5158, but if I add up the amount of deaths plus recovered, it doesn't add up to that number. So is there something else that accounts for the 110 missing? Is it not reported, or?
Correct, not reported.
Okay.
Did you count the actives also?
Yeah, it's off by 110.
Okay, thanks. Jackie? Karen?
Sure, thanks, Mark. So Ade, I appreciate that presentation, and I know some of the current Board of Health members understand and remember where this request came up at town meeting. I do believe it was an instructional motion. at that time to consider enlarging the Board of Health. Prior to you joining us, and certainly what my colleagues' comments have made about being difficult to have conversations, that all stands. And in addition to that, we were in a period where we were having a very difficult time staffing the Board of Health, which then you had a committee of 2 people and they could never talk to each other. So, I would hate to see us go back to that period. And we had the same challenge with the HRAC committee. So sometimes these committees, I think we have a tradition, correct me if I'm wrong, that our associate members, when needed, can step up and become voting members if we're having quorum problems, okay? So that's a good thing. We've had the same problem with just not having enough members on the HRAC committee, and so that will be going away and it'll be replaced by a much larger entity. But I would love to hear from the Board of Health members. You've lived through this, and the demands on your time are much lower, thank God. But I'd love to hear from some of the current Board of Health members about whether we should continue down this path.
If I can speak.
Please.
We've talked about the idea of expanding the board to 5 full members, and on a couple of occasions in the past year. And I think all the board members agree that it would be a positive change to do that for a few reasons. One, as Chris mentioned and you mentioned, the fact that we can't talk to each other and not deliberate or make decisions, but just get feedback or inquire about how a board member is feeling about a particular issue. The fact that currently it all has to be either funneled through a day or not happen at all is very restricting, and I think it really diminishes the efficiency and the performance of the board. So that's a major thing. I think a second issue is, in my past experience in corporate life, you might have 2 people of the board meet with a day or another community member to work out an issue and then come back to the board with a discussion. Well, we can't do that because if we have 2 people from the board go, then it becomes a meeting. If we have 1 person go, which we've where we're restricted now, it's fine, but it really doesn't give an opportunity for a wider spectrum of input into that discussion to bring back to the full board. So that becomes a problem in terms of just trying to deliberate and resolve issues. And I think thirdly, I would say that if a resident is appointed to the board and is committed to spending the time and energy to be involved, it feels like they ought to have a full vote and not be an individual who can share his opinion or her opinion, but then not be able to actually be a fully voting member. It just doesn't seem particularly right. So I understand some of the issues around the open meeting law, and I think the idea of the state laws that require 3 members, that's a sort of minimalist view. When MAPC came back to us with a series of recommendations that Ade so nicely laid out, one of the recommendations was to go to a 5-member board, and that, and several other towns they pointed out that were, that they compared us to, did in fact have 5 full-member boards. So I think it's, I don't see the downside, frankly, in having a 5-member board, and I would strongly advocate on behalf of the board members who have discussed this, that the select board, make that recommendation. I think Fidel has inquired about how that needs to happen between the select board and the town meeting going forward. So I would leave it up to, in terms of the mechanics, up to the board, select board, and Fidel to work on that. But I think that's the feeling of the board. I would also say that the reason, and the day gave both an excellent review of the responsibilities of the Board of Health and the Health Department, and the sort of high-level summary of the MAPC recommendations. But I think I just want to say that the board has been through a lot in the last 2 years. A lot of turnover in the board, turnover in leadership, sparse staffing in the health department, and on top of it, dealing with a 100-year pandemic. And it's been a fairly rough time in the 2 years that I've been on the board. And I do feel, however, that not only are the recommendations of MAPC sort of salient and right on mark, but that we now have a very solid Board of Health in terms of the participation, in terms of the expertise of different members of the board. We have a very solid health director in a day, and we're almost there in being fully staffed. So I think we've turned the corner, and I feel like in the next several months, with the additional hires of a full-time public health nurse and the clerk, that we're where we need to be. Finally, I would just say that one of the recommendations of MAPC was that the board undertake with the health department a community needs assessment, maybe later this year, maybe early next year, where we would really look at the data and try to identify what are the health issues in the community that we ought to address in a more proactive and preventative way, and sort of get beyond being in the reactive mode, with COVID and other issues. So that's sort of next down the line, that you'll be hearing, potentially more of that in the next 6 to 12 months when we're ready to undertake that work.
Thanks,
Thank
Rick.
you.
Are there other members that would like to speak, other members of the board? Paul?
Only that.
Could you come up? Do you mind? Sorry.
There's a spot that says stand here.
Sorry.
Not accustomed to this.
Thank you.
Having.
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, Paula Curran. Having joined the board in the midst of the pandemic, it was literally handicapping not to be able to talk to one another and share ideas, share thoughts, and work offline together to try and manage the pandemic. Historically, 3 people probably did the job, but here we are. We don't want to have to go through this again with another pandemic. I think the time has come. And as Rick had mentioned, we have a lot of work that we have planned to do that's really exciting to bring our public health department up to the 21st century. We want to do the best we can for our citizens, and we would like to have Reading be an example to the surrounding communities in terms of the services that we provide to our community.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Kevin?
We'll take a lot of your time. Kevin Sexton, Associate Member of the Board of Health. I agree 100% with what Paula said. Rick, you detailed that beautifully. The one scenario I paint for you is there's a lot of collaboration now that's going to be going on between boards of health, police department, coalition. Sounds like there's going to be potential down the line for some kind of active living center. It'd be a great opportunity for 2 board members to then be able to go off into these different areas and kind of work with the town. Can't do that right now unless you're gonna call a meeting every time you do it. Theoretically, you can do that, but it becomes very burdensome to do so. So just wanted to give a quick scenario of how it could really work and work better. And I think it's really the last piece that we're looking at to make a really strong Board of Health and Health Department. And I think that's important moving forward. So thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. So a couple things. First, great, and thank you, folks, all of you, for incredible service during very, very difficult times. We did go through a lot of tumult and we burnt through a lot of people in the process. It was pretty horrific, and so very, very excited to see things coming together so nicely. Before we get back to the numbers question, one other quick comment. We're starting to receive some noise complaints, and I saw noise a day on your list. So just kind of want to put that on the radar in terms of things that we probably should be considering in terms either of time of day or level of noise or both. The complaints that I think we've seen and heard relate to both. Those may be things that we want to start giving some thought to as well. My other question is, it was a sanitation question, but I have a feeling it's CPDC. Maybe you can tell me. With locations, business locations, do they need to have composting or recycling as well as trash removal, or is it fine just to have one removal, as far as the Board of Health is concerned? Is that a Board of Health issue, or is that more of a town policy issue? I have a feeling it's town policy.
It's more of a town policy.
It is town policy. Okay, got that one right. Coming back to the number of members, also, I think that your arguments are spot on. I think that MAPC also had envisioned, even with making all the changes, that then moving to 5 members was the appropriate course, and the ability to do things as ones and twos is much better than when it's only ones. So I guess the question would be, I know we won't be moving ahead with anything tonight, but the process, I assume, is that the select board takes a vote. Does it become a warrant article, or is it a charter issue?
So the makeup of the Board of Health is listed in section 4.4 of the charter, right? And it outlines that the Board of Health shall consist of 3 members, right? And in order for any town to make a change to a charter, it requires basically a home rule petition. So the select board has to receive approval from town meeting in order to submit a home rule petition. So how this would work is that in fall town meeting, one of the articles would be to request town meeting approve that the select board submit a home rule petition requesting that the Board of Health be increased from 3 members to 5 members. And if town meeting approves, then our town council would draft that home rule petition, and it would be submitted to the legislature. And you know, it's hard to say how quickly that would be acted upon by the legislature. I've seen it as quickly as 6 months or longer. It really depends on the topic, on the issue.
So we should make that a future agenda item for us in terms of next steps, and then I guess bring it to town meeting if we were to take it forward, then a home rule petition. Okay, great. Any other questions, board members? Chris?
I guess, thanks, Mark. To that point, if we don't do anything, then the charter review in 2024 would happen anyway.
That's correct.
And it could be adjusted there if approved.
That's correct. So that's an option.
Any other comments, questions? No? All set? Thanks, folks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ade. Good job.
Thank you, and
Good night.
I should adjourn the Board of Health as well. Thank you.
So Rick, you've got a motion to adjourn from Paula. Just need a
I'll
second.
second it.
And
Okay,
it's-
roll call. Paula?
Yes.
Hopefully she says yes.
She did.
Yes.
And Rick, yes.
Okay.
So the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you for all your support.
Voting clause.
Thank you.
They can't even vote to adjourn?
Thanks, Ade.
So they had to have promoted another member, but they already had a quorum at 2. It's kind of strange with 3 people.
Future agenda.
With the board's indulgence, could we take a quick 2-minute break?
Sure.
All right?
Yeah.
All right, we will take a 2-minute break. All right, the board is back in session. I think we have a presentation on open space recreation plan update. Who will be leading that this evening?
Krista and Chuck.
Sure. Good evening, everyone, and good evening, select board members. My name is Chuck Taroni. I'm the Conservation Administrator, and I'm here to introduce the update to the open space and recreational plan. Town staff, planning, recreation, engineering, and conservation have been working on this 7-year update, last updated in 2013. If you're unfamiliar with the plan, the open space and recreational plan Most towns, most communities have these in place for planning and open space and recreational resources in that town. It's also required for us to tap into state grants and funds. We've been working with a consultant, Kristen Morvek, senior planner from Horsley and Witten, who will take over the presentation and give a little bit more detail to all the slides we've been working on. Krista?
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you to the board for having us this evening. So in addition to doing a presentation and just looking for your feedback and your comments on the draft plan, we are also looking for a letter of support that we will submit to the Division of Conservation Services, who is the reviewing entity of the open space and recreation plans. We've also had this request made of the Community Planning and Development Commission, as well as the Conservation Commission and MAPC. So I will begin my presentation. Okay. I always have to move folks around when I go into presenting mode. As I said, so today are going to give you an overview of the plan and hope I answer some questions, get your feedback this evening. So when we talk about open space and recreation in the open space and recreation plan, so for open space, we're talking about public and privately owned undeveloped land, and it has important value for its conservation features, recreation, agriculture, or it may just have scenic value that contribute to the quality of life and of a character of a town. So when we talk about open space in this plan, that's what we're referring to. I think recreation is a little easier to grasp. So this is indoor and outdoor facilities, playgrounds, parks, ball fields, basketball, tennis courts, and those types of things. So why does the town have a plan? So as Chuck mentioned, it does help support efforts to acquire funding from the state to support recreation and open space resources. But it also helps plan. As a planner, we look to help understand where we are, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. So meeting goals of open space and recreational needs of the town. But it also helps to maintain and enhance the benefits of open space and recreational resources. They provide obviously environmental benefits. They clean our air. They give us clean water. They provide social benefits. They keep us active. There are places where we can gather as a community. So they have a lot of benefits that we want to make sure that we maintain. So the current plan, so DCS has 7 required sections, but generally the plan is going to cover a community profile. So this is demographics, housing information, some economic information. It touches on environmental resources inventory and some of those environmental challenges, which I'll also touch on in a bit. There is an inventory of all the town's open space and recreational resources. It talks about needs, so needs for natural resource protection, community needs, and the needs of the town to operate and manage these resources. It highlights goals and objectives, and then there is a 7-year action plan that outlines how to meet those goals, and it has a time frame, responsible entity within the town, and potential funding sources to meet those actions. So when the inventory itself, so when we look at what we're including in our inventory, so it's town and recreational, town recreation and conservation land. So this will also include conservation land owned and managed by the Concom, parks, cemeteries, water department land, also in schools. We also inventory land from nonprofit and private entities, Chapter 61 lands, which are also referred to as current use lands. So they might be for agriculture, open space, forestry, and then also conservation restrictions. So this is, I recognize this is a very small map, but so this is the map of resources that are in Reading. There's different shadings of green. So the much lighter shade of green, those are state lands. this mid-shade green around like Cedar Swamp, for example, those are municipal lands. And this sort of brighter green is highlighting the sports field supports. You can see it highlights around the Meadowbrook Golf Course, the greens in there. And the lighter purple is private and open land trust land. And the hatched are conservation restrictions. And so here's the northern part of the town, and then here's the southern part of town. So you can kind of see the distribution of resources. So when we looked at the needs for Reading, we had a couple of ways to get that input. So we had a community survey that was out. So we started in late summer. On the updates, we had a survey from October of that year into early 2021. Followed by a virtual public workshop. During that workshop, we asked, what is the town doing well? Where can it be better? Where are new opportunities and things the town should be thinking about? We followed up earlier this year with an open house getting feedback on the action plan that we drafted. We also wanted to incorporate existing planning work and other types of initiatives that the town was doing related to open space and recreational planning. So the town forest management plan, the municipal vulnerability preparedness workshop and the work that came out of there, the town's climate advisory committee's report, the bike network and pedestrian priority plan. So we wanted to make sure that we incorporated all this work that was happening into this plan to help move those efforts forward. So some of the key needs that we learned about for resource protection was the importance of water quality, and that is a continued priority for the town. So addressing stormwater runoff and its impact on local water bodies, rain and melting snow and other sort of sources that travel across roads and parking areas, rooftops, they collect pollutants and they end up in rivers, streams, wetlands, those types of things. So the cumulative impact of that. So addressing water quality and doing public education around that. Also protecting habitat and wildlife corridors, making those connections between those resources, addressing, trying to identify habitat loss and enhancing where that can be done. And then also natural hazards and climate change. So thinking about the town's climate adaptation report and its MVP workshop, the hazard mitigation plan, and the town's natural resources are your first line of defense in addressing, mitigating, and adapting to climate change. So enhancing and maintaining those resources are an important way to meet the challenges of those. Community needs. So we learned about recreational needs, so a lot of new activities and new amenities that people were looking for, outdoor splash pad, pickleball courts, and just to continue to move forward with, at the time, the Birch Meadow Master Plan, so that had come up. For conservation areas, we learned that there was really a need to increase awareness. During the survey, we found that people didn't really know where a lot of those the town's conservation areas were, so just increasing awareness around them, environmental stewardship, and those that did visit those places thinking about better trail marking information, signage, and what's allowed in a particular spot, what's not, updating trail maps and those types of activities. Walking and biking, also a big need that we heard, but just so continuing to build that network both on and off road, trail networks, walking and biking connections between recreation and conservation areas, as well as residential areas. Recognizing there are some safety challenges, but also just to continue to try to address some of those and meet the needs to build this network of walking and biking. And then finally, targeted populations. So we do look at accessibility, making sure that spaces are accessible for people with disabilities, looking at environmental justice, ensuring access, that people have access from where they live. They can walk to a park or a conservation area, and thinking about where to add smaller parks and parts of town that may be lacking those types of resources and amenities. And then our youth and seniors, and making sure that those needs are also met. And then when we think about management needs, again, from a municipal perspective, the maintenance and upkeep of those properties. So a big need that came up is just the upkeep of existing areas, general maintenance plans, and this is both for recreation and conservation areas, having management plans and master plans that sort of help lay out priorities and, having public input in their development and sort of getting the needs of the community met. And then thinking about new opportunities. There are these Chapter 61 properties. They are big spaces and sort of how to make sure that those can continue to be priority for conservation or maintaining their uses. And then looking at existing town properties, are there opportunities for pocket parks or, the former wastewater treatment property had come up and are there opportunities there? And then finally pursuing the Community Preservation Act as an opportunity to identify funding that can help meet some of the actions or the needs that have been identified. Two more for management needs, so communication and public outreach. So, one of the needs that we heard from from the communities, they didn't know awareness of these conservation areas, but in general, just making sure that people know what the town has to offer. There are a lot of opportunities and amenities out there, just making sure that people know that those resources are out there. I think during COVID, folks were talking about COVID-19 and just the need to be outside and to be active and just the mental health importance of that. So just continuing that awareness. And then finally, looking at regulatory and policy needs, thinking about how to have policies that connect recreational and open space areas with new development or redevelopment opportunities to build those networks and to improve access to them by the folks that live there. This bullet of our acronyms, so low impact development, nature-based solutions, and green infrastructure. So if we're going to address stormwater and water quality, using more natural features to not only do they help treat stormwater, but they also add green space. They help us address climate change impacts and all of that. And then building on that, so considering climate impacts and development in general and how can we use nature and our natural resources to help adapt and mitigate those challenges. So I'm briefly going to talk about, we have 5 goals. So I'm going to just touch on the 5 goals and some of the actions that are associated with each of them. So our first is to build capacity to financially support the planning, protection, and management and sustainable use of the town's open space and recreational resources. So some of the actions around this are, developing multi-year maintenance schedules for conservation areas, thinking about needed trail updates, signage improvements, and those types of things, and developing a schedule that can be used to secure funding and continuing to update that schedule. Another example for Objective B, working with local businesses and other interest groups to help support the upkeep and maintenance of properties. So as an adopt a spot or something along those lines. And then finally, pursuing the Community Preservation Act, again, to provide a regular source of funding, developing a public education campaign that will help educate the community about the importance of what that sort of opportunity can bring. Our next goal is to maintain and enhance existing open spaces for passive recreation so they can be enjoyed by all users. So this really focuses on the town's conservation areas and the term passive recreation, which really, not necessarily requiring facilities, but walking, bird watching, those types of things. So just ensuring there are opportunities for people with disabilities to enjoy nature and to enjoy those resources. Some other actions are updating trail maps, making sure they're updated regularly, and finding new ways to engage trail users. Is there seasonal programming that can bring people to these places? And then the last one, build capacity to manage and promote volunteerism at conservation areas. So recognizing that, better management of volunteers. Volunteers are great. They are, help with keeping these places kept up and maintained, but just having better coordination, better training for them with the staff liaison is an opportunity there. Our next goal is related to recreational facilities and programs, so in maintaining and enhancing those resources. Again, really, the town has some management plans for some of its recreational areas, but continuing to review them, making some updates to them if they're needed, because they will continue to guide maintenance and their upkeep. For objective B, again, making sure that spaces are accessible for people with disabilities, thinking about universal design, beyond ADA, and continuing to do that in the town's facilities. And then continue to look for new opportunities, for new types of programming, new types of places. Are there opportunities for smaller neighborhood parks that might have, sorry about that, for multiple purposes. I'm a little carried away. Great, yeah, so 3D, new opportunities for parks in small places for those. So our next goal is related to a network of accessible open spaces and recreational resources. So again, this is about developing that network that links recreational spaces and parks and with conservation land, with walking and biking networks. So continuing to evaluate where there are gaps and ways that they can make those connections. Continuing to implement the town's complete streets prioritization plan, the bicycle network and pedestrian priority plan. And then making sure that new residential development has access to these open space and recreational opportunities, particularly in the town's environmental justice areas, and making, trying to find those connections between resources through the development process. So this is our last goal. So protect and enhance the town's natural resources for wildlife habitat, water quality, and to adapt to the impacts of natural hazards and climate change. So looking at the town's bylaws and identifying where they can encourage or require the use of low impact development or nature-based solutions for stormwater management. Opportunities to expand the town's tree planting program, to plant more trees in schools and public parks, but also really looking to continue to work with existing partners, the Open Land Trust, the Mystic River Watershed Association, and private landowners to sort of maintain those open spaces and enjoy the benefits that they can offer. And then for C, environmental, continue to promote and demonstrate environmental stewardship. So are there opportunities where you can show folks that they can do rain gardens and composting, how they can contribute to the larger goal of protecting the town's resources, using town land as a demonstration to show what a rain garden looks like, or those types of, how those demonstration projects can work and how they can be applied and on someone's own personal property. With that, that was a very high level, very quick overview of this plan. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have and follow up as needed. So I will open the floor back up to you all.
Thanks, Krista. When I look left here first, any board member comments, questions? Jackie? Throw you on the spot.
No, it's okay. Just a question. I'm curious if we know whether we have any of the Chapter 61 land, and if so, how much?
Sure, I do. You do, and I'm gonna.
There's small pockets, but the biggest piece is the Meadowbrook Golf Course.
Thank you, Chuck.
So most other property, like where Pulte Homes was, and I believe right on Main and Franklin, which is in back of the veterinary clinic, those were just taken out of the program. So the only one left that's sizable would be the golf course.
Okay.
Pear?
Thank you, this was great. I'm glad to see us put this in place. I can see this is where phase 1 of the Birch Meadow Master Plan, this will apply to that because I was in some of those virtual sessions where people talked about, I wanna bike and I don't wanna get run over, and we talked about the spine being a way to achieve that. And I think I saw the viewing platform that's accessible up in Matera Cabinet in one of your pictures, is that what that was? Thought I recognized that, unless we have another one that I haven't found. So this is great, and go ahead. I'm glad you included the Reading Open Land Trust, which is interesting that it's included, but those lands will always be passive recreation and stormwater management without really talking about it. Okay. Well, thank you, this is amazing.
They're doing their natural function.
Exactly, that's it.
Yeah.
Chris?
Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Krista and Chuck. Do you guys have any thoughts into if a dog park would fall into any one of these areas, perhaps over near the water treatment facility, kind of over there in that open area where the town forest entrance isn't going kind of scenario? Do you have any thoughts, concerns, if that was to become a reality?
So so I guess the chair, the current chair of the Conservation Commission weighed in on that with Bob, and I thought the select board also, seeing that was a protected area of critical concern. And the dog park, I mean, town forest is, there's a lot of dogs in town forest already, but it's the parking area that I think is the stumbling block, and bringing the parking down to the dog park. If that piece could be solved, I think, that might be something to think about there. Otherwise, it's a great idea. Every good town has dog parks, and they probably have more than one. And I think there's definitely areas in Reading, if not at the treatment plant, elsewhere where a dog park could fit in.
Okay, would there be another area other than that sizable that would fit that you can think of that would work? I guess the parking is going to be the concern no matter where we end up going, right?
Yeah, so I just think the way that the town usually finds spots is it's a public forum, it's a discussion. It starts from a list of areas, and then each one's discussed and taken off the list, and you come down with a final spot. I think I could say that the Conservation Commission supports dog parks. I think the Stroud Ave spot I mentioned it's the parking that would be tough. Now, if some way to walk around through Lot 5 to that area and then start a dog park, that would be great. It would take permitting. There might be other spots in town where something like that could happen, that it's outside of conservation land. Not to say it's not appropriate for conservation land, but right now we don't have rules and regulations in place, and we don't have a spot to talk about.
Okay, thank you much.
Thank you.
No, I'm good. I guess one question I saw it mentioned a few times on a bike path. Do we have any dedicated bike paths now?
So strictly speaking, conservation land, I know the Millette project going in is also for mountain bikes and bikes. So that's probably the first one, but I do see bikes everywhere, town forest, all that. I believe working with the Trails Committee, and there's a few mountain bikers that help us out on the Trails Committee, I believe that the town forest is open for mountain bikes.
All right, thank you.
So quick question, just kind of connecting the dots here for a second between the open space plan and, as Karen brought up, the Birch Meadow master plan and things like that. Are there specific kind of next steps that you folks recommend as part of this open space plan? I mean, I saw the objectives there. I'm thinking more kind of at a project level. Is Birch Meadow master plan kind of one of the first on there, or are they, how are they connected? Let me ask that question.
We do make, so the open space and recreation plan, it's a little broader, so it's trying to direct these more specific projects. So we do mention it, and it does give it support. I think That is something that requires more public input as you move forward in its development. So that we visit the open space and recreation plan every 7 years. So you want to at least give yourself some that time to at least guide direction and what you're going to do, but also give some support of your current project. So we do mention it. And we do give support for it to continue to move forward. I think one of the key things about a plan like this is, because it is a tool for funding, if you mention some specific, not too specific, but mention projects and you can sort of build some support for them as you apply for different types of funding. So you want to be open, but not, and specific, but not too specific, but they are connected. We did try to incorporate as many of the town's current planning efforts as we could to help support them and move them forward. But it's sort of like the triangle, the open space plan is a little more broader, and then as these other plans are more specific, but we do have to continue to move that particular plan forward and to identify some of those other plans that there are in town for different recreational properties to revisit them and if they need updating as well. That was also identified as a need.
Got it. And where you are now, did you just update this 7-year plan? Is that kind of our status?
Yes.
Okay, and so can you give us a link to the more detailed plan? This was great as an overview and appreciate that. I'd love to be able to dig in a little bit deeper. I suspect other board members would as well.
So the plan in its draft form is available on the Conservation Division page. It's right there on the first page, the landing page, and there's a link to the forms and the appendices.
And it is also on the town manager memo.
Oh, awesome. There's a link.
There's a link.
Beautiful. Thank you. And then about the Community Preservation Act, how do we learn more about its true standing and things? I know there was a lot of older information when the funding ran out and it wasn't such a good deal for communities. I also know that they now charge a lot more for real estate transactions and I think it's the deeds that fund the CPA now. What's a good source of information for us to use when we have a community discussion about that?
There is, that's a great question. There is the Community Preservation Act has a great website.
Yeah.
It has all the communities that have passed it and it has all details, but it also has a lot of great resources to educate residents about its benefits. So you don't do a lot of, work, reinvent the wheel, so to speak, but it has a lot of, lessons learned and what have you on that site. And I can provide that to Chuck as a resource.
Sure, yeah, Stuart Saginaw, when I worked in Boxford, that's where he lives. He's a director at the coalition. And he would come down and talk to the town if that's what's needed or some other way to do that. I know that's how it works in other towns. They're there to promote and help towns implement this process in their towns. And I guess as more towns get involved, and the biggest one a couple of years ago was Boston, that's when the funds were depleted a little bit. So the match isn't quite what it used to be, but the legislature each year has granted a little bit extra money to try to make up for that. So it's still good, it still helps out. And one of our goals in 9, so goals and objective, it's to promote and establish a sustainable municipal funding source. And that's not a municipal funding source, that's just a good way to, I don't know what it is, but that's just a good way to promote some of the things that we talk about in the open space and recreational plan.
Cool, thank you. Any last comments?
No, I think you're spot on with the CPA comments. I see that along the lines of let's avoid an override any sooner than we have to by taking advantage of these grant funding opportunities for things we're going to be doing anyway. Maintaining our open space, maintaining our town forests and parks. Great.
Awesome. All right, thank you very much, folks. Much appreciated. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, sorry for the slight delay. talk about a change of name or change of doing business as for Ricky's Liquors. Fidel, you wanna lead that?
Yes, sir, perfect. So Mr. Kalpesh Patel, who is the owner, is here tonight, but I'll just share that this is a request to just change the DBA. There is no change in hours or in the license whatsoever. So I did invite him in case the board had any questions, but it seems, you know, a pretty standard request. No public hearing is required, but a vote is required.
So you wanna change the name to Reading Liquors, correct?
Yes.
Great. Board members, questions, comments? Chris?
Oh, no, I said.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure, it was a hand up?
Not this time, Eric.
No, didn't we used to have a Reading Liquors, or you would think I would know this, but down over by the train depot, there was a liquor store there. What was that called?
Burger King. Next to the Burger King.
No, are you thinking of by the train station along
Yes, the
High
train
Street?
section. That there's a few auto repair places. There was a
With
liquor
Square
store
Liquors
there.
now,
That's
I
Square
don't know what it was.
Okay, Square Liquors. Okay, well, you obviously would have determined that there isn't another Reading Liquor, so that's great.
There's no two
Okay.
Reading Liquors.
Thank you for coming tonight. See, you sorted that out for us.
So no comments? No, great. We have a motion, please.
Yep, move to approve the DBA on the annual all alcohol package store license for Jay and Ricky Inc. DBA Reading Liquors at 214 Main Street, Reading, Mass.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Karen. Any comments? None appearing. Let's take a vote. All those in favor of granting the change in DBA, please raise your hand. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Good night. Thank you for coming.
All right, next on the agenda, Affordable Housing Trust Fund Town Meeting Instructional Motion. Thanks for joining, Ivrea. So how do we want to kind of guide this forward? So let me chime in a little bit and see if others want to join as well. So we talked in a couple of ways about affordable housing at town meeting and even in our own group and also at ARPA in terms of what we can do to support more affordable housing in town. We have an older structure in place in terms of our trust fund that is somewhat limiting in terms of kind of how it might work. And Ivrea in a memo has outlined to us some options we might have if we want to change that structure. And the advantage of the change, if I understand it, and then I'll hand it to you, Ivrea, is to create kind of a committee that would have responsibility for trying to actually promote affordable housing. We've had this trust fund sitting there forever, doing almost nothing. It got used once, maybe it didn't get used as well as it could have in terms of on Haven Street. And the money's just sitting there and doing nothing, and we don't really have an action. It comes to town meeting every year, and more people have been complaining that it's doing nothing. And I guess I'm in complete agreement with that. And would like to see kind of a different structure. For board members, comments, questions on that, and then Ivrea, we can ask you to kind of outline more about kind of where we are and where we could go and how. Chris.
Thanks, Mark. I did something the Board of Health could not do, is I spoke with Jackie, and we had went over the Oakland Road thing that we discussed previously. Seeing that we both lived right over there, we kind of wanted to see if we could both go with the committee route and see how we would to go if that ended up moving forward. So I guess this is more of a global thing, not pigeonholing it into Oakland Road kind of thing, but you know, I'll speak for myself. I'd like to be involved in moving something like this forward. As you mentioned, it's been quite a while, so.
I agree with your comments, you know, since I've been here, it's just an article that's brought up, and even before, you know, I ran in 2019, it's, you know, watching town meeting year after year, and yeah, I think the approach that the memo that Ivrea sent us, I think, you know, if we all read it, I think the action that's she suggested we should do, and go from there.
Comments, Jackie?
Yeah, I think the memo gives us kind of the steps we need to take to have the organizational capacity to move beyond kind of the this latest stage, which has definitely run its course. And I remember back to town meeting last month where, you know, even among some contentious votes, I think there was very broad support for this instructional motion and for the concept of you know, taking a look at this, seeing what we can do with our existing resources. To Chris's point, Oakland Road, but you know, not limited to Oakland Road. So I'm glad to have Ivrea here to walk us through it and understand what we need to do to move forward.
Okay, I concur. New town manager, I've had several discussions about different models. You all remember yes, Chris, you were here. I brought forward the Weston Affordable Housing Project back in the summer when we had the opportunity to buy all of those lots over at Meadowbrook. So I'm glad to see that town meeting agreed, and I think we should move forward on this. Start making this productive.
So one of the things, and then I'll give it to you, Ivrea, truthfully, is to also think about if we were to do something like this, we might want to actually allocate more funding to it so that the amount of money would be much more useful and encouraging of affordable housing development. You know, there are different sources for that. ARPA might be one, town meeting might be another. I don't know if there are grants, although I would doubt it, but you know, who knows? So here we go. Let me hand it to you, please. Oh, sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just before, I also kind of segues into our previous conversation, it's also worth noting that the CPA, if the town were to adopt it, can be used for affordable housing. It's not limited to open space and recreation,
Great point.
so.
Ivrea, please.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think that you all read the memo, and you're discussing this completely appropriately. It's a policy decision for this board to make. You have a system that was adopted in 2001, and it allows you to allocate funds to affordable housing projects, but it really puts the burden on the select board to kind of move that along. So the benefit of potentially adopting a formal Affordable Housing Trust Fund through Section 55C of Chapter 44 is that you would now have a board of trustees who is dedicated to affordable housing. Their sole responsibility and obligation is to increase housing stock and further affordable housing projects. The benefits, you know, I have that chart that I laid out, but the main one is just flexibility. The way that it works now under your 2001 Special Act is that if the town wants to expend funds from the Affordable Housing Trust, it needs to have been laid out in an allocation plan approved by town meeting, and then both the select board and the Reading Housing Authority needs to vote to approve that expenditure. If you were to move forward with a 55C Affordable Housing Trust, the trustees have the ability outside of town meeting to expend their funds in accordance with the bylaw and the statute. So in terms of next steps, I think that if the town and the select board decide that, you know, this is the path forward, you need to start thinking about what the bylaw should look like. What responsibilities do you want to give the trustees? And the memo lays out, you know, some of the responsibilities you can empower them with, and some additional considerations you might want to think about, you know, limiting borrowing capacity and whatnot. So I don't know if that's a select board item or whether the select board wants to create a subcommittee or empower the town manager to go off and, you know, present something to this body. But, you know, the next step is kind of drafting a potential bylaw.
In terms of liberating the existing funds, if we were to go to this new structure, you mentioned we can either, you know, spend it down or get a special act. How involved is a special act? How regular is it? Is it something that happens kind of all the time, or are we like talking about spending a lot of time and money to chase that?
No, No, special acts are granted pretty frequently. In my tenure here in Reading, I can think of at least 3 of them that we've done. So, town meeting does need to approve it, and then we submit it to our legislative delegation, and they have to submit it to the Senate and the House, who do need to vote it. But, these are pretty standard, and especially if you're replacing it with something that is going to give Reading more flexibility around affordable housing and progress those goals, I can't see any issue with the legislature. So the questions for that special act will be: 1, do you dissolve the existing special act? And 2, what do you do with the funding? Do you just transfer them directly, or do they go back to the general fund? So those are things that, this body, a subcommittee, or Fidel could make a recommendation on.
Thanks, Avery. Comments, thoughts, folks?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty well outlined in here. I think for me, it makes sense for us to swap over to the other one. It does seem like, by Avery explaining it, it seems kind of convoluted and long, but at the same time, what else are we doing? I see no reason to not just get it ready for the fall town meeting. I mean, and my other comment is, nobody's gonna mention that Ivrea has a different background this time around without the pizza oven thing, so.
Pizza peel.
Pizza, whatever it is.
My sister-in-law is visiting, so I'm in my husband's office.
You didn't have to explain, it was just. Yours was always unique, always unique.
How do folks think about either creating a subcommittee or asking the town manager to drive here?
For me, it seems somewhat straightforward. I don't think we need to bog it down with the committee. I think, without a vote, I think we're all on board with this, is the sense that I get. So that's my opinion.
Yep. Bill, you have a comment?
I do have a comment. I think that that our staff and myself and Ivrea could draft something and we could bring it to the board for discussion and approval. And I think we could do that fairly.
Everybody nod their heads.
Fairly quickly too.
Yeah.
This is pretty straightforward.
The one thing that I would suggest is that we as a board think about additional funding and how we would think about that. I think that's an important part of this thing also. It's
460 something, I
Oh, it's
wanna say.
460, okay, it's 460,000 sitting.
What's it invested in, like a savings account?
I don't think it's invested, I have a feeling it's just sitting.
Oh, God, well, that's because that is the same number that it has been for 15 years, whenever
Pretty
Haven Street was done. Okay.
So I'm hearing from the board that the approach would be to go with Fidel. Is this something we need to take a vote on?
No, because it's going to have to go to town meeting, so you can just authorize, I think there's a consensus here that you want town staff to move forward. I think that's sufficient. And Fidel, myself, and key staff members can kind of put our heads together and present a draft bylaw to this body. I do just want to note that, one of the benefits of Chapter 44, Section 55C is that, any gift for affordable housing purpose can go directly into this trust versus having to go to a gift account. You can have an inclusionary zoning bylaw that requires developers to pay housing fees that would go directly to this account. So there are, financial avenues that are laid out in the statute that we could take advantage of if you do want to look at some additional funding options.
Sounds great.
Yeah, this is good stuff. And the other great thing is that we had, I think, a few town meeting members, or at least one, who I think would be willing to kind of drive ahead here, which would be pretty cool. So, not for this stage, but for later stages.
I have a quick question, Mark, for me. For Avery, is that okay?
Please.
If we go down this route, which we're going, and the trustees, for some reason, go off the rails, what can we do about it, if anything?
Yeah, so, we can always have, generally the select boards and communities appoint the trustees. If the trustees were to, go off the rails, as you say, you could potentially hold a hearing and remove them from office. we can talk about what that would look like and whether we want to build something into the bylaw or whether we should just rely on our general case law principles of removal. And then also the Board of Trustees will have a trust document that they'll have to follow. So we can talk about whether the trust document should include provisions for removal of officers.
Could we, as a board, discuss about whether or not we should enable some sort of a presentation to the ARPA committee to talk about that opportunity? How would we get that done? Could it be like a senior center model where we would engage some staff to make a presentation to the ARPA committee?
Absolutely.
That we, of course, can join in and
Absolutely.
be educated.
Definitely. We definitely do that.
Does that sound something that y'all are interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only not downside to that is just the whole shovel-ready thing. If this still has to go to town meeting in the fall, et cetera, you know what I mean, by us putting more money into it, that's the only thing that I would see.
That's an excellent point. We have until the end of 2024 to encumber. So even though, it's a great point, even though we're gonna get recommendations in early fall, we also talked about the school department not needing all 2 million and coming back to us with more funds and this. So it seems like we could use all that runway and it could be helpful.
I think the other thing is that we're looking at this going to November town meeting anyway.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's kind of the timing. I think that probably would, you know, make sense. You know, you know, we're gonna make decisions on ARPA funds at the end, and I'm hoping, you know, not all of it will be expended in the next, you know, X days. But that might be a possibility for there. I think that this is another one of those unique opportunities that is difficult to fund other ways, but it's worthy of a presentation and discussion.
You know, I think that we could have a vision for Oakland Road in the next 30 to 60 days. And that would, you know, that could potentially make it more real, more shovel ready. And it's not to say that we would fund all of it, obviously, but I think a few questions have been asked about the property, right? The ledge, is it buildable? How many can you build? Is it one townhouse or 3 townhouses? With the funds that we have been given by town meeting, which was $50,000, we have engaged an architect now who is going to answer those questions. And the idea is not to get it to 100% design. It's to get it to a place where those initial questions have been answered, and you know what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund could do is essentially be formed and be the leader in that project. And one option could be to do a long-term lease of the land to a developer that builds affordable housing, right? So it's not the town putting a ton of money in it or paying for it 100%, but you know, it's more of a privately funded development, which we all like, I think.
Chris?
I just had one follow-up for everybody. So you mentioned if we swap over to the different special act, that there could be a fund set up where additional money would come in. What is a scenario on like a figure there? So is that some building in Reading is being built for $3 million and we get $10, or like what is an example of what we could set up that other communities have done?
So if your zoning bylaw requires what's called inclusionary zoning payments, then those payments can be made directly into this trust versus having to go to the general fund and then be appropriated out for affordable housing purposes. So it would require some type of amendment potentially to your zoning bylaw. I can't give you a figure. I'd have to look to see what comparable communities are charging, but generally it is, you know, if you're not going to build affordable housing in your development or a certain amount of affordable housing, you can pay into this fund instead. And, you know, we can get you more information on that, but the benefit of going with a 55C account is that you can put money directly into the trust versus having to go first to the general fund and then vote it at town meeting. It gives the trustees more flexibility.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering what, like a roundabout number would be, but like you mentioned, you
Yeah,
can, you
I'd
can
have to
find out,
look.
because to me, if it's like some $5 million building and it's like $300, I mean, what's the point kind of scenario at that thing? But if it's something more sizable, then, you know, it starts to make sense. So,
Just a question, Avery, so, in thinking about that point, if it were a small project and based on the new zoning, isn't there a payment as an option if they don't put in new units? Would that be an example? And if so, would a guidance of 10% be kind of a ballpark number to play with? I mean, just versus $100.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mark, I can't answer that question without looking at the zoning bylaws. I apologize. I just don't have that information off the top of my head. But that's the point of inclusionary zoning payments, is that instead of doing your affordable housing, instead of constructing the units, you're paying, and that those funds are earmarked through the trust.
So, you know, perhaps could be, you know, much more substantial.
oh yeah, because like I said, minimal numbers like that, just, you know, they do all add up, but
Yeah.
if you think about it, how many are really adding up? 3 to 5 a year, maybe? Buildings, sizable kind of thing, as opposed to houses.
Well, we'll see how this MBTA thing goes. Other questions for Ivrea?
Yeah, just one more question, Ivrea. In your memo, footnote 1, on page 68 of our packet, you talk about the special act allows the trust fund to be the repository of any CPA allocated funds for affordable housing. Is that still the case under the section 55C? Okay.
It is, and I'd say that, you know, I represent, most of the other communities I represent have affordable housing trust funds, and they are primarily funded through CPA direct allocations or through a town meeting vote or a combination thereof. So, you know, if Reading were to adopt the CPA, you could put funds in the 55C account as well.
Great. Oh, yeah, so that's the, sorry.
Nope.
Mr. Chair. So that's the question I had asked a couple of times at the finance committee. Whether we could front load CPA funds. So it's not exactly the same thing? Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna retry.
Yeah, maybe for another day.
Yeah, thank you.
For another
Sorry.
day. We good?
Mhm.
Okay, so in terms of, so this was just a discussion tonight, but if we want to take this forward, so we've given a sense in terms of asking the town manager to spearhead this with you, Ivrea.
Wonderful.
We are on it.
Thank
Great.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Ivrea. Nice to see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, next agenda item, discuss senior center town meeting instructional motion. Phil, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So 3 instructional motions were passed in this town meeting. We are talking about 2 of them. The third one we're ironing out with DPW, and it's basically making improvements to a private way. But on the second one, I think it's pretty simple. It's basically an instructional motion from John Sasso, who was requesting for us to look at options, lease options, to relocate the building elsewhere, right? So, and I'll say that in, you know, in the short time that I've been here in Reading, 2 things that have come up all the time. You know, one is what is Walgreens up to, right? Like, what is what are the plans for Walgreens? And the other one is General Way, right? Can we engage, you know, the owners of General Way in some form of conversations of hosting a senior center? We legally cannot make calls to people and inquire about rentals, right? Basically, it's a public advertising process. We've got to make a kind of apples to apples document that says what we're looking for, and it's got to be done through a request for proposals. So what I recommend is that we essentially follow the instructional motion, and we put it out. We put out an RFP. An RFP is non-committal. It essentially is testing the waters to see who answers, and the answers could range from no one to someone who responds with a large amount of money that we can't afford anyways, or magically, it might line up. So my recommendation to the board would be to essentially put out the RFP and see what the responses are. The RFP would be drafted by our procurement officer. There is no cost to it. It's all done in-house. We would essentially review what comes in, and if something looks good, I would bring it to the select board at that point. But with the RFP process, it allows us to have a discussion about the property, have pros and cons. If it gets to a point of negotiation, we can go into executive session. Essentially, it starts the motions.
And just to add to it, so one might say, oh, what about recalc? What are they doing? And does this get in their way? And this is a kind of an additive kind of thing. I think this addresses shorter term possibilities, which I think was the spirit that John Sasso brought it up in. What can we do now? Or what can we do if there is going to be a new senior center at some point in the future? What do we do until then? So this is another kind of bridging sort of activity. And the notion of the RFP would allow for people to respond both with, I think you said move the building. I would call it, allow people to go to a different space as opposed to physically moving the building. But that's just semantics. But thinking about the space either as replacement or additive or whatever. Obviously, if things are all over the place, it's more difficult. But I think in Jean's plan, she's thinking about, I call it basements and attics and extra rooms and things like that. This is a little bit more formal and is seeing, what's out there, what's possible. We did share it briefly at Recalc. Was that last week? Yeah, it was last week. And there were questions, but I think that they were addressed in terms of understanding that this is, it's not this is an and. This is saying, we're looking at long-term through Recalc and the feasibility study. We're looking at short-term with the basements and attics. And this might be something that is kind of that bridge again in between. Questions for Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I guess, Fidel, so you can, by doing the RFP, you then could end up sending it to the owner of Walgreens in General Way, et cetera.
The RFP would be available to anyone to respond. Anyone, anywhere.
You don't send it. It's
Well,
there.
yes, I know.
It's posted on our website, and it will be shared with all of humanity.
Perfect.
Any other comments or questions? All good?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I think that it was great to see the amount of support for the motion in general at town meeting. I think that folks are very aware and wanting to figure out the right things to do. So I think this is another step in that path. All right. Next is discuss Simon's Way Advisory Committee creation and charge, page 73. Scroll to 73.
Could you pull that up, Caitlin, please? Thank you.
73. There we go. So, Carlo, Fidel, you guys worked on this, yes?
Yes, so I've been, everyone but Chris and Jackie knows that, I've been advocating, what can we do with this land? When are we gonna do something with this land? And, it's come to that time finally. So Fennell and I, pulled up some maps and we looked at the whole area and specifically the land that we purchased from the Zanis, I think the 2018 and 2019. It was 2018 actually, but and just my individual personal vision is some kind of a multi-purpose building that we don't build. I'm not saying it's gonna be that, but given the footprint and given that we can go up, and if potentially we can get someone else to pay for it, that's what I call a win-win for us and the residents. Again, highest and best use, is that a senior community center? Is it 100% recreation? Is it a hybrid? Is it, another school? I mean, it can be a lot of things, but I think this committee will flush that out and help us determine what we need. I mean, we know that recreation, specifically lit fields, are a problem in town. And yes, we have fields that we could put lights, but that proposes that other problems as far as, like pollution, the neighbors, and a whole host of other issues that probably has been discussed in the past. Until Birch Meadow finally gets implemented 100%, we lack lit fields. And I'm not saying this is gonna be used for a lit field, but if it's indoors, it doesn't impact. And that's pretty secluded anyway over there in that area. So we just came up with who we think, this is Fidel and myself, should be in the committee as far as stakeholders, and just see how it goes, and then bring a recommendation to us, and then later to town meeting, obviously, to see if we're gonna fund it, if we're gonna enter into a ground lease, and things of that nature. So I think we need to see what whoever's on this committee wants, and then obviously same forum as Park and Recalc, have community input, have some forums, potentially a survey on what people want to see. And I think this is gonna, parallel as far as timeline goes, what Recalc is doing as far as, needs and assessment and how many square feet. A new building costs a lot of money. And then, we're gonna have it be a green building and have all these mandates put on the building that are all good. So that increases the costs, but then it produces other efficiencies. So I think it's been a long time coming, and I don't know how long this is gonna take once we figure out what the highest and best use is and if we can collaborate with the partner. But I think we need to do something for this piece of property.
I mean, I just wanted to add that this came up, I think, in my first meeting here. I mean, and if you look at the general use of the area, right? I mean, there's a baseball field at the top. The ice rink, obviously, is something that has been very successful here in Reading, and brings a lot of value, right, to our community. That building, it's my understanding, obviously I wasn't around, was done in a similar way. Essentially, the land is owned by the town, and it was a long-term lease to the developer of the building who runs it and maintains it, right? So we have no stake in hiring, firing, staffing, in maintenance. But I do think that it does bring a lot of value to the town. So I just see it as a natural kind of mirror on the other side. Obviously, the idea of this committee is to bring a lot of people on board. As you can see, there's members from there's one member of conservation who we want in there. We want someone from the permanent building committee, and the idea is to get a broad brush of members who can together make a recommendation to the select board. Just like RAC, what this committee is doing is recommending to the board, right? This committee has no power on its own. It's only providing a recommendation to the board. So if you know if what is dreamed up is crazy and unrealistic, we'll bring it to the board, and you're not obligated to do anything with it. It's more it's a process to get the ball rolling on this property.
Comments, questions? So one thing, just thinking about timing for a second, I think that recalc realistically, kind of December is when the recommendations will probably come through in terms of space requirements and things like that. So I know this is talking about February as a goal, right?
That was next summer.
They have it for annual town meeting.
So committee shall begin its work in July 2022, submit for Feb 28th, 2023. Shall submit development recommendations to the select board no later than Feb 28th, 2023.
Okay, sunset on June 30th.
Yeah, so it's a little bit quicker. So the timing might just be a drop tight. I don't know, you can have space input this summer, like can't really have space input this summer.
No,
Yeah.
not this summer, but
Soon thereafter. I think we just want to make sure that that's in there. And I know you talked a little bit about membership and keeping it kind of as committee members, town volunteers as the kind of inside group, and then opening it up to community input on the outside.
yes, always. Yeah, I don't know, obviously, until the committee is formed and we discuss how often to meet, but I think after the first few meetings, I don't think it will take that long to hone in on something as a concept. And then, if those few meetings take place over the summer, even if it's only one or two because it's summer, by the fall, I'm hoping, by, November, December, we can all, start hopefully coming to, some ideas that are realistic. Not just, pie in the sky, like, all right, this is, if it's gonna be multi-level, this is on level 1, this is on level 2, this is dedicated to this, 15,000 square feet is dedicated to this activity, 10,000 square feet to this activity, or whatever the case is. But I know what you're saying, but we can always ask for more time. I mean, I think it'll be less than a year, but I don't wanna wait till November town meeting, personally. I was kind of trying to, Phil and I shouldn't do, trying to shoot for April town meeting, if possible. It's obviously if possible. I don't want anything to be rushed.
Yep.
But then to wait another 6 months, it might be needed. I really don't know.
I think my concern would just be that if ideas are getting formulated kind of in the fall, you're not gonna have a whole lot of input on a senior center by then. And it would be pretty easy to kind of not fully incorporate that. I'm a little concerned by that timing, but depending on how I'm thinking it through, I agree with you, it would be better to be pre-November. I'm just worried that ideas forming by the fall are gonna be ahead of recalc, and I don't think it makes sense to speed up recalc. I think we need to stay the course on that in terms of how it's going.
Oh, yeah, no, that honestly, we didn't even discuss it, not to discount it, but
Yeah.
I didn't really think about the timing of that, honestly, until you
Yeah.
just brought it up.
Maybe a little bit tight, and then thinking about, then you're gonna have a feasibility study that takes place probably Q1, realistically. I don't know how long do we think we're gonna spend? Is it a 3 month, do you think, or a 6 month?
3 months probably.
3 months? So, Yeah, so this is just a little quick, possibly, please.
Yeah, I have concerns. We've talked about a lot of things. We have a lot of balls in the air right now. The water tank, which is, they need to not fall in the neighbor's home, so that's like a pretty big project that we need to keep an eye on. We've talked about the recalc, and if this is truly a, I'm not sure highest and best is the best use, but, if this is an all-encompassing committee to really understand what the needs of the community are and solicit input, then you need to be in sync with the tasks that are already under control, in progress, meaning the senior community center. Because we don't have a lot of large parcels of property in town, so that would be, I share Mark's concern about that. Also, the Killam School is gonna start heating up, and the permanent building committee will be involved in that, school committee members will be involved in that. We also just came from an RMLD campus redevelopment meeting, so we're gonna try to move forward on redeveloping the RMLD area with them. And now tonight we talked about going forward on some affordable housing options, which there's no reason that couldn't be your highest and best use for this property. So I'm a little concerned on the timing as well. I feel like we have a lot of projects coming into one tiny funnel. So, and specifically beyond that, I think you may need to slim down this committee. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that it doesn't need to mirror RAC. And finance committee members, this is kind of out of their wheelhouse. Finding a highest best use for a property that the town owns, that comes under the select board. So, they don't need to be on there. And then I suggest, rather than a school committee member, because so hear me out, they're focused on Killam, that they're gonna be like, why do you need us on this committee? But another alternative would be just to ask the Dr. Milchevsky to you have some welcome input from participation from staff. I would add him to the list, add the superintendent. I don't think the school committee has bandwidth to do this, and I also question, they're not looking to build any other schools. I also question whether it's appropriate having them on this committee. That would leave you with 5. I completely agree with the permanent building committee, conservation committee member, CBDC person, that's a great idea. Recreation, I'm not sure so if you're really truly looking at what is the best use for this property, you want to keep it as broad but as neutral as possible. So I have a little concern about making it too focused one way or another, but it is conservation land. If you want to build something, if we get to a point where we decide we need to build something, a permanent building committee is the committee that's going to handle it. That makes a whole lot of sense. I would certainly check with the school committee. I would certainly keep the select board members involved. Could be a couple of select board members if you feel like you need more people, but 5 is a more reasonable size. Exploratory committee, that's kind of what I thought this was gonna be, an exploratory committee versus highest and best use. Highest and best use could be selling off the land so that the town could recognize revenue for housings. Are you gonna take that into consideration as well?
Yeah, everything, there's no pigeonholing here, everything is on the table. If everyone says we can get $10 million for this land, and everyone agrees, that would be the recommendation. I mean, we bought the land so housing couldn't go there.
No, we didn't. We just bought it. We just bought it because they wanted to sell it.
No, that's not true.
Yes, I was on the finance committee, so yeah.
That's not true.
Carlo, you were not on town meeting or on the finance committee, so I'm just gonna say that we had no plan in mind. So it's fine if we wanna actually look at the property.
Not the town of Reading. Not the town of Reading. A select board, sitting select board that none of us were on, didn't give the property owner an easement because of the whole stuff that was back there. I can't remember all the details, but the specific details of that could have been a 40B or a 40R over there. And because of lost documents
Carlo, I have
and
to
the
tell you,
Coast
this
Guard.
was not what was presented.
So we're going, let's
My point is that none of this was disclosed to town meeting or to the finance committee. So this is,
What was disclosed?
all of the stuff that you're talking about right now, that is not what was presented to town meeting or the finance committee. So I'm not sure we wanna speculate
You're the
on
one
this.
who brought it up, I didn't bring it up.
And my point was that the property owners wanted to sell it. It was presented to the finance committee and to town meeting as an opportunity to acquire a large piece of property in Reading, and town meeting agreed to do that.
Correct, but there's a backstory to that, but we don't need to discuss that, but that, correct. We bought the land and we got a good deal on it, I think.
Well, you think, okay.
So it's largely unrestricted use in terms of the non-conservation side of it. There's no stipulations. It is up to the town what to do with it.
Correct, yeah, we own it, yeah, of
Right.
course.
So, yeah, so any possibility should be explored, I think is the point, right?
Was know what highest and best use is?
Um,
I mean, it's semantics, whatever wording you wanna put, it's whatever, you know, that's, you can interpret it any way you want. If it's selling it, that's the highest and best use. Building on it, if that's determined, that's the highest and best use.
Well, like a little differently, vis-a-vis the community's needs, right?
Yeah,
What's the,
I don't care how it's worded, it's gonna, the same outcome is gonna come. I think, it's gonna be the same outcome. If this committee determined, okay, we need another school, even though we don't, and that's the highest and best use because we have tons of families moving into town, then that's what we should build. To anticipate we need more classrooms. So that's in essence the highest and best use. It could be selling it, it could be parking. We need more parking. And we're gonna run a shuttle to the depot. That could be the highest and best use. I don't know what it is.
So would it kind of work to add a sentence that talks about, as part of the highest and best use, just kind of anticipating or understanding needs of the community, or you know, I know that sounds like it's implicit, but to make it clear, because highest and best use could, you know, if somebody suddenly said, well, you know, I'd buy it for a little bit more than you guys could get otherwise. I'm not sure that's highest and best use, even though it might be a couple of dollars more.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean, that's fine.
That might clarify a little bit in terms of what's going on.
Our intention is not to sell it, but yeah, that's, of
well,
course.
that could be a conclusion of your committee. What I'm
Correct,
concerned about is
correct.
I'm hearing all of these things that are, like, we already know what we're gonna do with this, then, or you think you know what the community wants to do with this.
I have no
I wanna be
idea.
really careful that this is truly an exploratory committee, that really, I like the survey, the outreach, the public process, that all makes a lot of sense.
Let's get additional comments.
More of a question on some of the timeline, just a timeline issue, which it sounds like is not completely in our control. Do we know when the SV design architects will have kind of feedback for this committee to review? It sounds like, it looks like in the memo, it was just approved by town meeting last month. So is it the case that the committee would sort of input to the architects first? Or are they, I guess what I'm asking is, is that work already underway?
It is already underway, so I think two meetings ago, I presented, you know, what one option was for Oakland Road, what one option was for Simon's Way, and essentially, it was our town engineer who laid out, right, like what's buildable, and then what are the possible, what could we fit in this land, right? It is purely hypothetical. It's not restrictive. This consultant is doing the same thing to a higher degree, higher level. So it's going to be. I would expect it. Sometime by the end of summer. They'll have a few options: a pool, a football field, housing, and basically it's very high level options. What they think is could go in there, but again it's purely hypothetical.
That's all I have.
Chris?
Thanks, Mark. My take on this is when I learned that the Birch Meadow thing has been going on since 2007, and just wondering how that can even happen in 2022. I'm all for moving anything forward that we are able to do at whatever pace that we can do it. If that means we have 51 projects instead of 50, then we have 51 projects. I don't want to see Simon's Way getting brought up 15 years from now when some other select board one, none of us are here, possibly. I don't see what the downside is to doing it is. If the committee comes back and says that, you know, they want to put a merry-go-round on there and call it a day, then we can all still say no, and then that's the end of it. I don't see what the downside is to just the committee exploring, seeing what's out there. We might have somebody come in and say they're willing to front all the money for it and put something there. We don't know unless we do it. In terms of the senior center, I think it's a little bit out of the way for that property. Once again, I'm not a senior, so I don't know if I'm willing to travel over there, but I think the point of the senior center being here, it's more closer to everything in the middle of town. I'm not sure with it going out there how well that would work out. Obviously, there'd be tons of parking, so that's the benefit to that. And in the makeup of the committee, I'm fine with the 7 members on it, and I would like the school committee to tell us that they don't want to be on there instead of us telling them that they don't need to be on there. And that's where I stand with that.
We respond on one thing. So as it relates to the location for a senior center, I think downtown is more ideal, but it may not be possible. And this is, you know, maybe one of the opportunities. The problem is I fear we could preclude things too quickly by moving too quickly. And I think that's not the right thing to do here. And as much as I don't wanna just kinda let it go to Foreverland, that doesn't make any sense. I think April's too fast. I don't think we're gonna have the information. I also think that the feasibility study on the senior center, in March, you're gonna have information that could include thinking about part of a facility on Simon's Way. And under the current timeline, it probably doesn't fit. It's just a little too quick by probably a few months. So I think I'm having a little problem with the Feb and April timelines. I think that it's not that it's necessarily a finished thing that's a done deal, but boy, if everybody's already thinking in a certain direction and we haven't thought about the potential of let's say a senior center or community center.
You bring up good points, yeah.
I'm just, that's my rub.
No, I especially that, you know, that you're leading that charge, I can, you know, you're looking at it in a different way and not that I'm saying, okay, I want, you know, this is what, you know, Carla wants and, you know, forget what Mark wants, but it's what the community wants. And I think the timeline, yeah, if it needs to be longer, that's totally fine. I'm not opposed to that, and I don't think Fidel's opposed to that, or none of us should be opposed to that. I mean, we have some things in front of us, but, you know, Killam, I'm not gonna compare Killam to this initiative or any other initiative that we're taking on, because that's been, talk about kicked down the road, that's been kicked down the road for decades, never mind since Birch Meadow. But, you know, and as far as members go, these are all residents of the community. So we just kind of thought about, and of all various backgrounds. So, and you know, permanent building committee, yeah, that makes sense. Conservation, yes, that makes sense. CPDC, you know, makes sense. Recreation, given the location, I think makes sense. Finance committee, I guess you could debate, but, you know, finance committee is an important board in this town. So, and so is in school committee, but yeah, there's a lot of committees. We talked about a few other committees and then we kind of whittled it down to this. So I like the number 7, to be honest with you. But that's up to the 5 of us.
Sure.
Okay, I'll be quick. So I had a thought. I still think that the school committee is going to be and they need to be very focused on Killam and implementing this new reading program. But we have talked about the senior center a bunch of times, and we don't have any Recal Coalition, any kind of representatives in there. So I might propose that we swap out the school committee member for another reasonable or a makes sense type of person. The school committee doesn't make sense to me, it really doesn't. But council on aging or recalc or somebody like that could make sense. And the finance committee is charged with vetting budgets and reviewing warrant articles. You could go with 2 permanent building committee members if you feel like you need to have 7. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And your meeting's gonna run long, staff time is valuable, so I want you to be as able to be as efficient as possible. Chris can tell you how long Park went on, sorry.
Check.
No, I actually forgot. Sorry.
Comment?
Sorry.
Chris?
I'll refresh your memory.
Good, thank you.
I think the finance committee handles the majority of the money in this town, and if we're gonna spend some money on this, I think that they should be involved. I don't see why that wouldn't be the case. Once again, with the school committee member, I'd like to think that they know kids more than we would, even though I have kids, but it's kind of the kid aspect of it, and if it's a recreational facility kind of scenario, I don't see what the issue is. But if we want to change the dates, I have no issue with changing the dates, as long as something is done and moving forward. So if it wants to be fall town meeting, and then you adjust these dates to coincide with that, then go ahead. But I see no reason to not just start looking and just getting feedback. Because once again, we could just say no to the merry-go-round. Like, what's the harm in this going? I understand a lot of work will be put in and then all got tossed away, but once again, there's 2007 Birch Meadow, amongst other things, that just, I don't want to see happen. So if we want to adjust the dates, I don't know what date you can pick to change things other than just fall town meeting, so then backdate it from there. Does that work with your timetable, Mark, you think, or no?
Yeah, I think it certainly does. I think we'll be far along. I hope that we'll be very far along at that point.
And that's only the final findings, right? So, I mean, there's still discussions that happen all the way up until then. And it might end up being that, who knows what's gonna come of it? I don't think Carlo, Fidel, anybody knows what's really gonna go there.
Yeah, I think the issue to kind of think through here is, how do we allow the time for, let's say, the feasibility study for senior center to dovetail with this, without having already locked in on an idea? Because then now we're just talking about disruption instead of process, right? It's like, oh, everybody's thinking of X, well, but wait a minute, this is what makes sense. Well, but we're already thinking about X. Or maybe some developer comes across and says, here's an idea. Or some group comes across it, here's an idea. I think the question is, when are we willing to act? So I guess from my perspective, if somebody just knocks our socks off, I guess we're ready to act pretty soon. But other than that, I think we want to really, do this in a process where we can see everything that's going on. And, I wish that recalc was going to be much faster, but it isn't. The reality is we're going to see results of a survey in December. We're going to see a feasibility study in March-ish. And I just am concerned that if we have an idea and then suddenly that all happens in March, it's like, well, wait a minute, we already have all this stuff done. What are you talking about? It just feels like it's too fast. And I'm not usually one who says things are going too fast.
That is true. Yeah, that's fine.
So-
Backdated from November town meeting.
Yeah, and it may be that it.
And that might be too quick. We don't know.
Yeah, I would hope not, but I think it's a starting point that fits with the other plans we're working on.
I
Maybe
had
that
to
makes sense.
extend Park twice, 3 times,
3 times?
maybe 4 times, but then it was 3 again. Whatever, it is what it is, as long as, everyone's doing, other than town staff, it's everyone who's doing this is volunteer. It's,
Yeah.
it's real life happens, you know?
No, I
but-
think the issue is that we've got a process in place, we've just approved funding to do a feasibility study that could certainly incorporate the possibility of part of a building down there. And to kind of prejudge it, I think is just not a good idea. I think it's kind of saying, yeah, but, and I don't think that's the right thing to do here.
I think it's very easy, just change the date and that would be my thing, whatever date anybody wants, 24,
August?
23.
August,
So, sorry, in terms of starting.
instead of February. change it to August.
I think that works. I think the question is, do you start in July of this year? Do you start?
Maybe not,
Yeah, I think maybe it's a little too quick.
maybe not. But I could see starting in September, for sure.
Or maybe year end. Maybe year end makes sense. We'll have a lot more information.
Could put it off for 6 months.
Sorry, this is just an honest question, lack of why would you want to hold off until the end of this year to, like, are you saying just because you wanna coincide this discussion with, like, the results of recalc?
Yes, and if a freight train starts moving in a different direction before we have recalc results, it's hard to slow it down. Even though it might be the right thing to do, there just may be momentum that kind of says, wait a second, why should we do that? We'll figure out something else. You know, we kind of, there's a process we just put in place. I think we should, you know, work with it. I don't, you know, I'm not saying let's put it out into never, but it kind of feels like we've got a process that we should allow it to play into this discussion. And you know, if we start having meetings in advance of that, it kind of is asking for a different solution, because we don't, there's data that we can gather that's in process that we're paying for that we're not gonna have. And we're gonna have it, you know, December you'll have survey results and a recommendation, Marchish you'll have feasibility study information that could include specifically, what if we would have put a building or
Yeah, no, I get it, and this board will be well aware of that, obviously, regardless of the survey results or not. I don't wanna see it kicked down to December, no. I'd rather have it start in September, and we meet monthly, we don't have to meet every 2 weeks. I mean, Park was unique where, you know, town staff did a lot of work. And the groundwork was there. They just took their time and you know, went about and had a process, and they decided to meet that often so we could get things done, because things were just shelved. I'm not saying we're gonna meet every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, whatever the board decides, and if we have a long runway, then you can say, all right, yeah. Once a month, and then we get the concept or an idea formed, whatever that is, and then you can say, okay, now let's start flushing it out. But you're right, I think July is probably too soon, given what we just talked about. But I don't wanna wait till December, we're just kicking the can down the road.
And this reminded me actually of what I meant to ask. So I remember that Park was kind of like was extended a couple of times. Was that because just wanting more input, or what was it like a too short, you know, of a timeline to begin with in hindsight, or?
Well, I remember back in the beginning when Bernie wanted to have us wrapped up by like Thanksgiving, and everyone was like, yeah, it sounds great to me, and then here we are in like, you know, April. So it was more, you don't anticipate meetings going, you know, 5-6 hours or something like that over Park, or in having disagreements and everything. In the end, I think we all came to, you know, the right conclusion. It just took time, and all different scenarios come in. We met every 2 weeks-ish in the beginning, and then it drifted off towards the end. But for the most part, there was a lot of different streets and presentations and hearing from residents. You know, it was very involved, and, you know, like I said, in the end, we got there. Not as quick as we had hoped, but it is what it is. So that what could happen with this. It could be 2025, who knows? But I think that's why I think it's better to just start sooner rather than later. I'm okay with September or whatever. I mean, I don't plan on nominating myself to be on said committee, because, you know, for me, Carlos had more time invested in this kind of scenario. But like, I just change the dates and be done with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I wanna recall back to when we went through the RAC process, and there were certain members of the select board who had concerns about the makeup, and other members of the select board who spent a lot of time putting the charge together were open and amenable to making changes. What I'm concerned about right now is I hear a couple of select board members having some reasonable concerns about this, and what I hear is some other select board members are not willing to make any changes. So that's a disappointment to me, because we just went through this with RAC.
In fairness, I think we're working toward a solution, which I think is appropriate. That's what
I
we should
heard a
figure out.
timeframe
Well,
change potentially, and that's
yeah.
it. And what I heard is that, we had a lot of people focused on kids and recreation on this committee, and what I'm hearing is I don't hear any senior representation on this committee, and I've made the case that the finance committee doesn't need to be involved at this point. But I don't hear anybody willing to listen to this.
And that you're entitled to your opinion. No one's objecting to your opinion.
Can I just, let's take common ground first, right? So I think that the idea of starting in September, having a recommendation for August and hitting fall town meeting, I think achieves most of what we're trying to achieve. I think it certainly allows for input from RAC. If something changes drastically, we could conceivably accelerate. If it doesn't, we at least have a timeline. I think that is a reasonable approach to this, from a timing point of view.
Mhm.
Is that?
Yep.
That you're not as comfortable, Jackie?
No, I would love to have Recalc be further along in their process. We're spending good money to do the feasibility study, and I'd like to see that pretty much done so that it could be input to a committee like this.
Well, I mean, it'd be great to have it done. Just puts us into March starting point, which, I mean, there's nothing terrible about it, but I guess there's a desire to move it ahead too. I know, I'm thinking that from my perspective, starting in September, things are coming in December-ish, maybe we're starting to have, there's a lot of input, they're starting to have discussions, we've got some feedback from the survey. Now you have a feasibility study that's going into development, so they're gonna actually look at locations and opportunities that could be an input into this process. I hear the concern, I'd love to wait, on the other hand, it'd be nice to move ahead a little bit too. I think fall town meeting is a reasonable target. I think making sure we've got the input from the feasibility study will help this along. Might even provide some good feedback in terms of, hey, here's how you can use X thousand square feet.
Yeah, right.
And I think, but I hear, Karen, I hear your concern loud and clear, which is make sure that we haven't come up with a solution that kind of, it makes it so that we didn't need the feasibility study. Or we did, but we didn't need to focus it on this at all because it's not a possibility. And we don't know that that's the right answer. We just have to be careful of that. Jackie, any further thought?
No.
Fidel, what are you thinking?
I think it's a policy decision, I'll say. No, I'm joking.
Okay, thank you.
That's a line. That's a line.
Back to you, Five.
Yeah,
No, you can just say you like the name, you like the acronym.
We spent a lot of time on the name. We spent a lot of
Whack,
time.
the whack.
I think it's a start. I mean, RAC was created in I don't know, February, and the first two meetings were, we're kind of like, just being acquainted, the schedule and things like that. I think that even in RAC, if the urgent, time-sensitive requests were not there, I mean, we see the results of RAC coming, 7 months in or 8 months in, right? I mean, things just take a long time. So I think if we start in September, I think and I think the diversity of the committee is good as well, because that those arguments are healthy and are positive, right? So I think this is good.
It may be worth thinking a little bit about kind of more of a senior voice on that group somehow, and I'm not sure exactly how that happens. Here's what I was going to suggest. I think we're finding some areas of agreement in areas where we're not quite there yet. Tonight it's on the agenda as a discuss. Why don't we give it some thought, roll it to the next agenda, and see if we have some other input to take to that, and then we can go take a vote on it and figure out a way that makes it work.
Yeah, so I guess for me, are we all good with the time frame though? like, I'm not gonna be updating this document, et cetera. I just think, so are we only, is our only concern the board member composition? I mean, I'm fine with, I mean, making it 8 just screws things up, is, in my mind, obviously. None of these things end up in ties though, ever. You know what I mean? Like Park never really ended, I don't know what.
And if it did, I think
Yeah,
that's
I
an
mean-
interesting statement.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know that 8 is problematic, you know, it's not as nice as 7, but it's not problematic, I don't think.
And I do hear the, you know, the senior voice on the committee kind of thing, but I think RAC is trumping this to begin with. And I think if RAC comes back where the results end up saying that, you know, the feasibility study, senior center, you know, 99% should go here and you have nowhere else, like we're all of a sudden gonna just be like, that's not happening. You know, and I think.
Did you mean recalc?
Recalc, sorry, yeah. I just think that, I think there's a voice there, an implied voice by us waiting in putting this committee out a couple months is implying that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's respectful and appropriate. Here's what I suggest, our next meeting is June 14th, there's a recalc meeting on June 8th. I'd like to put it on their agenda. Just say, hey, here's what we're thinking about, here's kind of what's on the table, just wondering if you have
See
any
what they
feedback.
think. Maybe they're busy. I mean, I don't know. Lots of
I know
committees.
that they'll make time.
I'm okay with, obviously, the next meeting, the next 2 meetings, or whatever the board decides, but I've always seen this prior to even meeting Fidel and, you know, once this property was acquired, that it's not exactly what I'm gonna say, but I've always seen it as a multi-purpose. If it's not gonna be housing, it was to me a multi-purpose facility that suited different age groups, different needs, whatever that is. And if we're gonna just say, okay, it's gonna be a football field because we're gonna have another football team, then maybe that's the highest and best use, but that's not the case. So, and we know, we've been talking about Reading, you know, Pleasant Street Center, senior/community center for a long time. All right, for years. So I know we've been saying senior center, but I know what that means, you know, what you're implying. So I see it as a multi-purpose, just like a multi-purpose field. You can play lacrosse on it, you can play soccer on it, you can play football on it, you can do a lot of different things. Maybe not at the same time, but the building facilitates that.
Yep.
And that's the way I'm approaching this. I'm not saying what it's gonna be, and I'm just one person, but to serve as many residents as we can. And as a bonus, if we don't have to pay for the building, that's just puts money towards other things.
I think that's spot on. I think one of the opportunities to consider though is that it may be this is a great spot for a community center. And you'll have a feasibility study that takes this through in March. It actually gives you some really concrete information to work with, including maybe potential costs.
Right, but it could be multi-levels and it could be, that could be an aspect of the building.
Yep,
That-
absolutely.
That's, I'm not, you know,
Yep,
let's not
absolutely.
define it as one thing,
Yes, agreed.
that's all.
Yeah, and when I say community center, I guess
No, no.
I'm thinking multi.
Yeah, you know, again, we can only go up so high, but that if once we 100% know the footprint, we kind of approximately know the footprint, then I'm like, all right, you know, it's 3 or 4 stories and it has open space and it has rooms and it has a kitchen, it has whatever, you know, a lap pool or, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know that there are some community folks that are interested in the space already. We know that there may be multiple good uses for it. Let's roll it to the 14th. And before, Chris, to your question on confirming date, I'd like to talk to Recalc and just let's get their input and I can share that on the 14th.
Guys, one more question.
Sure.
I was just trying to follow through. What was the thought process of putting a CPDC member on there? What were you thinking?
It was a, depending on what goes in, there's some form of zoning change is gonna be required. The property is currently zoned, as is, that entire corridor is currently zoned for single-family homes right now. So some form of zoning change will need to happen.
Which will need to go through town meeting.
and CPDC first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna add that to the future agenda item too. Let's go to Select Board Policy 1.6.8, declare surplus property, police car 12, page 75.
Okay, this is an 11-year-old police vehicle. It is the oldest car in the fleet. It's got electrical issues and
I'll
it's
take it, I'll take it.
It will be auctioned online to the highest bidder. And I will share the link with humanity as well for that auction.
It's the,
I saw
you call
one
it a broad
today.
link.
Yeah.
And so what needs to happen here is the board just needs to take a vote to authorize this, correct?
To declare surplus. Once the vehicle is declared surplus, we can then auction it.
Board member questions, comments? Yeah,
Will we be seeking to replace it with a hybrid
Uh,
or something? Or is there a purchase following up with this retirement of this vehicle?
It's part of the ongoing process. Will it be replaced by a hybrid? I will table that
Better.
question. I will definitely look into that.
Okay, thanks.
It actually says in the notes, it's already been replaced on the surplus
Sorry,
one.
I missed that, thank you.
Yep.
so it's probably still taking a spot right now.
I think we'll get a lot of
Leaking
money,
oil.
a lot of money for this vehicle now than a year ago, surprisingly. I don't know how,
I know.
who knows?
Let's move on fast.
It's got four wheels.
Yes, it's wait, how, are we siphoning the gas fiddle out of this vehicle before we give
Out of
it?
the expedition, yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
if you can make sure that's
You got it.
arranged, I'm okay.
Any other vehicle questions?
And it's diesel too, so no, just
Diesel expedition? Well, I guess maybe.
diesel really expensive.
Okay, are we ready? Is there a motion, please?
Yes, move to declare police car 12 as surplus property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jackie. Any discussion? None appearing. Let's take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, we are 5-0 on the vehicle. Sayonara Expedition. And let's go to future agendas. So a couple things. So SWAC.
You making fun of me?
Swag.
We have to
think
do
we
the
need
hand
to-
motion,
Yeah, SWAC.
swack, every time.
So from the discussion tonight, I'd like to schedule CPA to come on at some point. And we probably need someone to help us kind of present. And if
Second that.
Chuck's contact might be an interesting person to invite. But just generally to get more informed about what it is, how it works, what's happening, what's the funding, et cetera.
Sure.
That'd be great. Other topics?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I had mentioned at the last meeting about the select board policy and the town remote meeting stuff ending for town staff and whatnot. So if we don't do that on the 14th or 28th, they are all in person in
Sorry.
July.
So the Senate budget that. Go ahead. Like you're good.
Oh, yeah, I just noticed late last week, the Senate budget included remote hybrid meeting authority to towns and cities until year end 23. But that doesn't mean it's passed yet, but it's moving along.
It expires July 1?
So it with the extension, it would expire December 15th, 2022.
Oh,
So the Senate, right, is passing the budget right now, and they added an amendment to basically extend that deadline for another 6 months.
Okay.
And there's a sense, and I spoke to Senator Lewis about this on Monday, yesterday, that I think they are talking about long-term change, permanent change.
I guess my thing is when does the budget get finalized and voted on or whatever? Is that like July or is it next month? Because if it's July, we lose.
So right now it expires July 15th. And so there are a lot of communities placing these phone calls right now, right? I mean that everyone is on the same boat. So I feel confident that it will pass. before
I
the
guess we can
expiration
wait till
date.
the next meeting anyway, so we have time still.
Just looking, when is our,
It's the 14th and 28th.
right, we definitely have in June, I was looking into July, but our July
Oh,
meeting is
that's
the
19th.
19th. So that's too late, so we'd have to deal with it in June. So why don't we put that on for June
28th.
28th?
And if it doesn't have to happen, it doesn't have to happen. Great.
Extend remote for 6/28. Other,
Yeah, so the interim general manager over at RLD offered, has some great ideas to engage developers very early in the construction process, both commercial and residential, to get on this high performance building design, electrification, move away from fossil fuel. He offered to he and one of the commissioners offered to meet with Fidel and I and talk about some ideas that we could collaborate better, or encourage it. He says he's got information ready to go. This isn't always a hard sell, as we've seen with the Chute Street building kind of coming around and the Chronicle building coming around away from fossil fuels. So, I don't know what time frame, July, August time frame. Could we talk about, if the board, so deems acceptable, I will coordinate with those folks and we'll have a meeting and let Fidel and Greg come up with some ideas that we might start collaborating on that to encourage us to make progress on our climate goals. And then present your ideas and how you'd like to implement them to the board. How's that sound?
works for me.
A little long-winded, sorry.
Just maybe not an agenda item, but maybe in a town manager report, we can get a quick update on the
Well, excuse me, just for 1 second, are we okay with Karen's suggestion?
Mhm.
In terms of setting the meeting July, August? I thought you were about to comment on that.
Oh, no, sorry, no.
All good? Okay, sorry, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, just a quick update on the post office restaurant, just to see how they're progressing. You know, like, what, is it COVID holding them up, you know, supply chain, not COVID, supply chain holding them up, is it? You can't find contractors, you know, which is
Yeah, that'd be
different than getting equipment.
When did they come in? Did they come in January?
They said they were gonna be open in May.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
Well, we approved it last.
December. Yeah.
No,
they came
before
in.
that.
He asked them to come back.
But they
in.
came back.
Right, they came
in
back,
January.
right,
Yeah,
right.
So-
So something's going on.
yeah, it'd be great to have an update. Do you wanna pursue it as getting an update first, or invite them to join us, or? maybe
I don't
update
think we need
first?
to invite them, it seems like, you know, just like, hey, you know, they're having the, you know, equipment's on a boat, you know, or whatever.
Yep.
And then one other cool thing, Mark, I know, there was the initiative for the lights at Lower Haven, and then that didn't happen. Is Erin still working with that company, or has that kind of been just put on hold till we have a better area for it? I mean, I know, I didn't think that was at this time, the right area for it to,
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So the lights are on hold. She is doing a pocket park with like tables and chairs, and at a future agenda meeting, we can definitely ask her to give you an update on the pocket park.
okay. And then, again, sorry, Mark, maybe this is the last one. Do we know when we're gonna hear from the bid, again?
I got an email today, but I haven't looked it over yet, but it's in regards to that.
I thought Liz still said kind of the end of the year.
End of the year, she said?
Yep.
I'll get an update for the bid.
It said June 8th is the
Still
meeting.
very positive, but
on,
I think the time frame is end of the year.
Yeah, it's June 8th. Liz sent, it's probably because I'm a business owner in the area. It's June 8th is a Zoom meeting. So,
Next week.
So, yeah, if you, maybe you could get an update on that as well.
Yep,
That'd be great.
absolutely.
Share with the board.
Absolutely.
Other items? I have one other item. So, we are on for June 25th, yeah?
Yes.
For our retreat.
Yep.
So it's not on our calendar, but should be.
You're right. Got it.
And 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 8:30?
8:30, how's that?
There's Canby Lake.
That's great, it's a good idea, I love it.
It's at Chris's World.
Disney World.
Disney World. Are we resolved on location?
Yes, so it will be at the library.
Library.
The library, yep. Community room, we're getting ice cream.
At 8:30 in the morning?
Someone, yep,
Oh,
absolutely.
breakfast.
We're getting ice cream.
I'm bringing breakfast.
Dippin' Dots.
That's for
Dippin'
breakfast.
Dots.
Someone requested ice cream. I don't know who requested ice cream.
That was me.
I'll take Dippin' Dots.
We get bagels and
Get a
ice
few
cream.
McMuffins in there,
Sure.
So
McMuffins and ice cream.
bacon.
what time does the library open that day, or can we make sure we can get access for 8:30?
You think we know anybody who can get us access?
We'll definitely get in there, no problem.
See
No
you
problem.
please.
Thank you.
Clean up a few doors.
Okay, minutes.
All right.
I did have a couple of comments that I sent to Caitlin, but not before today, of course. I seem not to be able to do things until the day of, sorry.
Me too, well, it was a 3-day weekend, so I kind of screwed things up.
That wasn't a great excuse for me, but. So Caitlin, can you share, so did you send comments as well, Karen?
Yes, I did.
We have this two separate ones, you wanna look at one then the other?
Yep, they might overlap.
Yeah, they're two separate documents. I can, I'll put Mark's up first. You read that?
No, I can't, but can you? Much better, thank you. So, let's see, yep, a little bit further down, first change was marked docs are noted, yep, there it is. I just clarified, the last sentence would now read, there are many tasks of the ARPA funds, he reviewed other potential sources of funds for this project, he now believes the ARPA funds represent the best way to fund this necessary program and supports the full 2 million ask. Just plug that in, it was, before it said, many asks of the ARPA funds, he now supports the money.
Okay, yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Next one, under Jackie McCarthy. So when you asked the question about pivot and reassess, I think the superintendent responded.
I believe one of the assistant superintendents,
Yeah,
intendants responded.
I think you're right. So I was just gonna suggest that that should be included here. And who was it?
I'm looking it up. I have Dr. Sarah Hardy.
It was Sarah Hardy. Was there a comment that they would be on top of this, something like that? I'm trying to, or should we go back to the tape and get it?
Well, yeah, I know, I think it was more that, she responded that the ARC core program does build in kind of feedback and, revision as necessary.
So just put that right in? So you cross out Kit, can you just cross out my sentence completely, the whole red there? And go back with Jackie's comment that.
Dr. Sarah Hardy responded that the program can incorporate feedback and revise, I don't wanna revise
The curriculum?
approach or curriculum,
Yeah.
Perfect. Is that good with folks?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next one, going down to, this is just a timing one where it said, Haley moved the board, closed the hearing. I just added a sentence. You opened it before you closed it. Chris Haley read the hearing notice. There was no public discussion in the room or online. Haley moved that the board close. Under Sharon Angstrom, town accountant update, the last sentence, it did say, she noted she has no real concerns at this time. I changed it to, she noted that all items are running on track and she has no real concerns at this time. Down to the board, and this is on the flag policy, the board agreed the safe thing to do at this time is
to not allow, so I just made it kind of, that's the action we took,
Yeah.
to not allow any flags.
We had a different comment for that.
When-
Did we talk about the, go ahead.
Why don't we close this one, and we'll
Okay,
come back
that's
around.
fine.
Under Victor, so the last page, currently our assessor Victor, I just added a little color. A number of members were concerned Mr. Centinello would not have the necessary resources to provide service to all three communities. Mr. Centinello reassured the board members he will be able to do this.
Are you missing a not?
Yes, sorry,
Okay,
I
so
added it.
not in.
Yeah, so on the first sentence, the number of concerned Mr. Centinello would not have the necessary resources. Yep. Then go down to Architects Report, Council on Aging, listening session June 1, just, that one doesn't matter, 7 PM at the Reading Public Library, doesn't really matter, I think, actually. This is in the meeting minutes. And those are my comments. So if those are okay, now we gotta get yours in.
Just a couple overlaps. I found a typo and had some stuff on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. They, okay, that shouldn't say that, I should say they. Thank you. Typo.
Committee.
This doesn't overlap with anything that you wrote. Actually, the last sentence said Superintendent Milichewski agreed that the schools would commit to. Thank you.
So did they commit to
Yes,
that,
they
or said
did.
they
Yes,
would
they
do their
did.
best?
No, they are going to reapply for, we could say it a different way. They are gonna continue to apply for DESI grants, and if they get them, then money will be coming back to us. And they had $87,000 of operational savings, and if they have more, he did say they will return them to the town. Definitely. And I do believe they will be successful, and they will be returning some funds. And we heard them say loud and, did I mention the backstop again? I don't know if we mentioned it anywhere else. They had said, it's a backstop. We just wanna know it's there if we need it. We're gonna do our best to get more.
I know it's not mentioned there, but I don't think he said that. I think it's implied that the money would come back to the town. I don't think he ever actually said
I'll
those
open
words.
to edits if you want. I want
No,
it
it
very clear
doesn't-
that we had the conversation.
No,
Yeah.
that's not even said there. I'm just saying what you just said. He didn't actually mention that though. But it's not in the minutes, so I don't think it matters per se.
It might have been a combination, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It could have been a combination of head nods and agreeing with some of the things. I mean, that was the substance.
A question, did you mean to single out Senator Lewis, or, and I'm trying to recall back to, did you refer to our state delegation more generally?
No, specifically, we had talked prior to that meeting about him reaching out specifically to Senator Lewis because of his committee assignments. And he came and told us that he had already spoken to him. So yeah, I didn't speak about the other two, I specifically, he specifically talked to Senator Lewis. Is it the Ways and Means? This is where I'm gonna which committee is he on? Is it the Ways and Means that does a lot of school committee, or is it just his, anyway, he is the school guy, that's his passion. So, he hadn't spoken with him and he agreed, it was a great conversation, he agreed, yeah, we're gonna keep doing this, he understood exactly what we were trying to do.
You okay?
So this I
Town
overlapped a
council.
little bit with you,
Yep,
but you could get, the last part can go away, I just didn't remember.
so the main change is to agreed with town council's recommendation.
Yeah, I'd love to have that in there
to-
somehow, if
okay,
you,
to a later date. So do we wanna maybe incorporate that, kind of make that an ad?
yeah,
Because
that would be
it-
fine.
So there are two things that happen there. One is to defer policy, and the other is to stop doing it for now, right? Both things.
I don't remember it being deferring the policy to a later date. I remember you, Mark, mentioning something after the fact, and I said it's probably best if we just don't do anything at this point, and that's where we ended up leaving it. So I don't
But you
think we
want us
do.
to take it up again in the future, right?
Yeah, we did have a discussion about coming back to it every quarter or whenever things changed.
Excuse me, I think we agreed, you know, maybe not all of us, but I think we agreed that we would follow it.
The recommendation.
But yeah, and that's how it was like kind of open-ended, like if things change, then we'll adapt or adopt or whatever the case is, but yeah, I don't,
So should we just kind of rewrite it that way? Just make it clean?
I think you had edits on yours. It kind of is overlapping.
I would be okay if we could take yours and just add in, the board agreed to abide by town council's recommendation, and however that fits into whatever you wrote, that's really the substance I wanted to bring in there.
Caitlin, can you copy Karen's change?
Let me go to yours.
Oh, so yeah, you copy hers and then bring it over to mine.
Yep.
Am I close? Okay.
Board agreed. Follow town council. And defer creating policy.
And not the same thing to do at this point. It's fine.
And that. Just an and in front of the that.
Yep. I'll fix it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Caitlin, was there one
Alright.
more on mine under liaison reports regarding Matera Cabin?
I think
Cause
we
it's
need
on
the-
mine.
The POW.
Yeah, I'm back to yours. Hold on.
Alright, thank you.
Still at the top, she was right.
Oh, yeah, that one, okay, and we hadn't seen that yet, I'm sorry, okay.
Great.
Yeah, back earlier, the POW thing, I don't think that was mentioned. How Karen put it on there, how she doesn't think it was mentioned, and I don't think it was mentioned either.
You don't think, yeah, you don't, I don't know, yeah, so I don't know how specific we wanna get, I think we just talked about flagpoles. If
I
we-
don't even think we said the word the American flag, I think it was just flag, and
Flag.
that's, yeah, we didn't mention those
So you might wanna like
specific.
take those specifics out of there if we didn't.
Agreed.
Yep, okay.
Let's take them out.
It's implied, but we never said it, or nobody said it here.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
Any other?
any other implies,
Yeah.
it's already on there.
I'm good with that.
Yep, that works.
Yep. Everybody? Any other changes?
Nope, I think that's it. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thanks, Caitlin. Can I have a motion, please?
Yep, move to approve the meeting minutes of May 17th, 2022 as amended.
Second.
Thanks, Karen. Any discussion? No? All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? 5-0. Final?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jackie. All those in favor? Opposed? 5-0. Thanks, folks.
Okay, thanks, Bert.